I was reborn as a sword. For hundreds of long years, my blade passed through the hands of countless masters. The cold, bloodthirsty steel of a bygone era, I was wielded by knights, and I turned them into heroes whose names would go down in history. But among all who ever held my hilt, one stood above the rest. I had found my comrade in arms. Together, sword and master roamed the world. My blade glowed with a brilliant green aura. They faced a colossal monster, our combined strength shattering both bone and cast steel. They climbed the frozen mountain range where frigid winds tore at the sky and challenged the white dragon. With a single earth-shattering strike, the dragon's head was severed. Its colossal body collapsed as the knight stood there. In triumphant glory, we traveled the world together, achieving deeds none could match. Time flowed like a river, and my comrade in arms became the king of a kingdom. A golden age was born from my blade, and I, along with the legend of Ruhan the Dragon Slayer, was now a sacred relic resting in silent majesty within the palace. My golden hilt and green gem glittered under the solitary lights. Please take care of my descendants. That was my comrade's final wish as I was passed down through his bloodline. However, the silence of the relic room was shattered by heavy, crude gasps. Why is it so noisy? The ancient spirit within the sword awoke from its long slumber. Ugh, how annoying. What insolent fool is shaking this body of mine? A large, fat, sweaty hand gripped my hilt. My vision cleared to a grotesque sight. An obscenely obese young man with blonde hair, his face contorted by greed and arrogance. "From now on, the master of this sword is me!" The fat slob yelled, spittle flying. A man stepped forward, trembling. "Your Highness, that is a relic that no one but His Majesty the King is permitted to touch. Please return it to its place." The sword's consciousness recoiled in horror. What? This pig is a prince. It immediately scanned the status panel that appeared in its mind. Adrian Leonberg. Male, 16 years old. Aptitude none. Personality arrogant, morbidly obese, clumsy. Lustful, lazy, easily bullied, emotionally unstable. Adrian Leonberg screamed, "Shut up! There's nothing in this country that I can't touch!" He swung the legendary sword clumsily. The knights flinched. The sword lamented internally. No way. Seeing this name, could he really be the descendant of my comrade in arms? But this level of potential from the descendant of the Sword Saint. Adrian Leonberg, drenched in sweat, raised the sword high, his eyes rolling back in a delusion of power. "With this, the king and the nobles won't be able to ignore me anymore." The sword had seen enough thinking. What a ridiculous fool. How can he act so thoughtlessly? Adrian yelled, his voice cracking, "Oh, great dragon slayer, lend me your power." The sword spirit roared in response, its voice like thunder in the mental realm. "Are you insane? Why would I ever lend my power to someone like you?" Adrian slashed wildly, forcing the knights to try and restrain him. "Your Highness, please put the sword down." "You mustn't do that in the palace." The words only enraged him further. "Shut up! You dare give me orders! Do you want to die?" "If I had the power of Ruhan—" Suddenly Adrian tripped. His entire obese body came crashing down, and the sword in his hand as a result was aimed right at him. Schlick. Blood splattered. The silver-haired knight saw it. His face filled with worry. The maid behind him screamed in horror. "Prince Adrian!" He collapsed to the floor, blood pooling beneath his body. "Call the royal physician now." But as Adrian's vision faded, the sword thought to itself, "Heh, so the one who got stabbed was this bastard. My vision is blurring. At this rate, I'm going to lose consciousness. For the first time in my life as a sword, if Prince Adrian were to ascend the throne, the kingdom would have no future. He inherited not a shred of royal talent, but he was first in arrogance. He had no abilities, but his greed was the greatest in the kingdom. He was a stupid, lazy, and cruel pig. That was the first Prince Adrian Leonberg. Like a black cloud hanging over the kingdom's future after such a prince was stabbed and left hovering on the brink of death, a strange rumor began to spread before he awoke. Maids whispered in the hallways. "About Prince Adrian Leonberg. Hasn't he changed a little recently?" A voice replied, "That's right. He's no longer flipping the dining table like before, and he hasn't been gathering his gang of scoundrels, has he?" They giggled maliciously. "Even the infamous first prince. I must be feeling ashamed. Isn't he just lying low out of fear? Just give it some time. He'll go back to being his old self." However, Prince Adrian Leonberg paid no mind to such rumors. The soul within was different. "To think that I killed my comrade's descendant and stole his body. Suddenly, the door flew open. A maid rushed in, bowing profusely. "Your Highness the King has arrived. Please straighten your attire to receive His Majesty." The prince, now the soul of the sword, remained motionless in his chair. He thought with suspicion, no, that man didn't even visit when I was on the verge of death. Why so suddenly now? The maid replied, "The knights are nearby. I pray you will watch your tongue." A tall figure entered the room. A man with silver-gray hair and a beard, wearing a stern expression and a red cape, radiating such authority. "I heard you returned from the dead, but it seems that temperament of yours is exactly the same. You may all leave." His Majesty wasn't expecting anything anyway. He's still sitting there confused, thinking, "Who is this guy?" The old man continued, "We still share the bond of master and student, and yet now you won't even pretend to know me." He recognized the man's identity. "He's this fatty's master." The main character spoke calmly, "My memories are a mess. I feel as though I might know who you are, but it seems I don't." The old man's eyes widened slightly in shock. "Ugh, don't tell me." A maid announced loudly, "His Majesty the King has arrived." Seeing this, the main character thought, the king, so he must be this bastard's father. Oh, he's better than I thought. I assumed time would have diluted the lion's blood into a dog's, but seeing this king, perhaps that's not the case. The king spoke with a disappointment. "To think you won't even greet your own father? It seems surviving death doesn't change a person." The servant stepped forward, full of anxiety. "Your Majesty, we have just heard that the prince's memory is not normal." Another voice panicked. "Good heavens, what a catastrophe! Why hasn't the royal physician reported this serious matter to your Majesty?" Summon the royal physician immediately to examine the prince. Afterwards, the physician examined him. He reported, "I can find no abnormalities in the prince's body. However, it may be a temporary condition of amnesia due to psychological shock." He looked at his son, who was sitting on the bed with a bored expression. The king thought suspiciously, "How very convenient. If you say you don't remember anything now, does that mean all that you've done until now never happened? When one makes the wrong choices, one may commit acts that are condemned by all. If one later realizes this, and never repeats that mistake again, that can also be called a process of learning. But you have forgotten all of that. Because it has all become as if it never happened. You have not taken a single step forward from your past mistakes, and you will not be able to move forward. In the future." The old knight whispered, "Your Majesty, please calm down." The main character sat there dazed, thinking, he's really tearing into me as the king left. He looked at himself again. Damn it, I've really stepped in shit. Forget being treated like a prince, it seems I'm not even treated like a human. What the hell did this kid do anyway? Suddenly a beautiful woman with a crown burst in her eyes, brimming with tears. She hugged him tightly. "I've heard everything." "You must be so confused. Your memory will come back soon, don't worry. What does that trivial past matter if you don't remember it anyway? To think your beautiful face has grown so thin. My poor son." He was suffocating in her embrace. He thought, where exactly has it gotten thin? The queen smiled warmly. "Even so, I am still so happy that you've opened your eyes like this. You must never touch such dangerous things again. If something had happened and you didn't wake up, I don't even want to imagine it." Those words made him think, "I'm sorry, but your son is already dead. This is truly a burden." Night fell on the White Castle, bathing it in moonlight. The queen left waving, "I will visit you again. Rest well." The moment the door slammed shut, his attitude changed instantly. "My comrade begged me to look after his descendant, and yet I killed the kid. It wasn't intentional, but I was the one who ended his life. Since it has come to this, and what else can I do? I must live well for the sake of the one who died. Reborn as a sword, I spent my life cleaning up after others. Now I'm in a fat, talentless body. But that's fine. I just need to build up my power once more. Do you have any idea how many children I've raised? First, I need to practice my magic." He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Green energy began to swirl around him as mana flared up, enveloping his body in a green aura. It grew in intensity, illuminating the dark room, but suddenly the energy flickered violently. Andrian gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face. Ugh! The green flames vanished into thin air. He looked shocked. "The mana has been dispersed. This body can't handle it." He refused to give up. Once again, he gathered the energy. His face turned red from the strain veins popping. Once again, green flames erupted from his hands, but they were unstable. The energy exploded outward. He fell to his hands and knees, panting heavily. He stared at the floor, horrified and exhausted. What the hell is this? What kind of body is this, anyway? Andrian thought to himself, if only I had my original body. With a constitution like this, I could have easily fixed it by forcing mana into it. Suddenly, a rhythmic knock on the door interrupted his inner turmoil. A person in a maid's uniform entered the room, bowing respectfully but with a slight tremor. "Your Highness, please forgive my intrusion. This is a tonic sent by Her Majesty the Queen herself. It may taste a bit bitter, but it will be very good for your body. Please consider Her Majesty's sincere intentions." The maid flinched, sweat dotting her forehead, steeling herself for a violent reaction. "I hope he doesn't throw the bowl like last time." She vividly recalled the memory of the prince throwing a tantrum screaming, "I told you I wouldn't drink any medicine." But this time was different. Adrian's eyes widened as he stared at the bowl. He recognized the energy emanating from the liquid. It contained magical power. Without a hint of hesitation, he snatched the bowl, brought it to his lips, and began to drink it greedily. The maid watched in silence. Her eyes went wide in disbelief as the notoriously difficult prince drained the entire bowl of medicine in just a few seconds. He slammed the bowl down on the tray. "Are you satisfied now? Now get out," she stammered as she prepared to leave. Yes, Your Highness." Left alone, he thought to himself, "Good. Now for one more. Luckily it worked, but the amount of mana I've gathered is still far too little. It's so small that it could disappear completely in just a single day." Suddenly, he opened the door and stepped outside, pointing at the maid. "Do you have any more of that?" A few days later, the room was filled with an ethereal blue light, his body enveloped in swirling magical energy. Finally, I can create a mana core. I've done this countless times before. I can create something like a mana core, even with my eyes closed. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through his chest. "It hurts." He clutched his heart, his face contorting in agony. "It feels like I'm burning from the inside. My chest is about to explode." That's right. Creating a mana core has always been this painful. I can't lose consciousness. If I pass out now, I'll suffer from a mana backlash. Sweat poured down his face as he tried to regain his composure. I have to focus and grab hold of this rampant mass of mana. Don't rush. Follow the path that flows along the heart to the right, very slowly. Let this new heart absorb it. A single drop of pure blue mana fell into the lake of his soul. The ripples of chaotic energy calmed. It condensed into a stable sphere. Adrian opened his eyes, now glowing a brilliant blue. It's done. This time it's not the mana core for someone else, but my very own. I did it. It's complete. I've created a mana core. A golden projection window suddenly appeared before him. Mana core has been created. He reached out and touched it, confused. Is this the status window? It's just like the status messages I used to send my master when I was a sword. Why is it appearing before me now? System is beginning data processing. Restoring connection to the source. A connection has been restored. Connection status poor. Connection is extremely unstable. Warning messages flooded his vision. Most abilities are unavailable. Only a few abilities are available. The judgment ability is now available for limited use. You can now verify the potential of opponents with a lower or equivalent level to yourself. What the hell? He exclaimed as more notifications appeared. The clairvoyance ability is now available for extremely limited use. You can see better. The clairaudience ability is now available for extremely limited use. You can hear better. He snapped his head towards the window. Abilities. His vision magnified, passing through the foliage and looking down at the garden below. He could see every single leaf on a distant tree with astonishing clarity. I can definitely see better than before. Suddenly, voices drifted into his ears from outside. He couldn't make out what was being said. He focused, and the whispers of the maids in the hallway became crystal clear. Don't you know his personality? He should have caused a huge commotion. He realized the extent of this power. I can even hear sounds from outside the door, but the strain is too much. A headache split his skull. Golden windows warned internal mana completely depleted, forcibly terminating use of abilities. He clutched his head as the system shut down. So that's it. This is what extremely limited means. The ability to sense everything from all directions without a single blind spot. The absolute senses I possessed as a sword are gone. For now, by squeezing out a tiny bit of magical energy, I can only eavesdrop on sounds outside the door or see a little more clearly. That will change once I expand my mana reservoir. His stomach let out a loud roar. I'm starving. The food must be brought up at once. First, I need to focus on adapting to this human body. Later, a magnificent white castle stood tall under the bright sun. Inside, the queen, with a warm smile, spread her arms. How praiseworthy. You drank every last drop of the medicine your mother sent. You finally learned to cherish your own body. Oh, that's right. Do you recognize who this is? Adrian looked at the man coldly. I don't remember. The queen turned to the scarred man. It seems he really has lost his memory, so you must help this child. Adrian silently observed, thinking, I was wondering who that was. So he's the queen's brother. The queen then smiled and said to the man, After all, isn't he your only nephew? The man gave a dry laugh. You say that as if I've lost something important. His past wasn't exactly great anyway, he thought to himself. From the looks of it, he doesn't like me. He continued aloud. Let me make one thing clear. All I can do for him is help him get rid of that excess fat. I can't provide anything beyond that. So give up any useless expectations. Don't forget that thought. The scene shifts to the training grounds. In an instant, Adrian is beaten senseless, rolling on the ground. From that moment on, he glares at the boy with murderous intent. You're eating, you're breathing, you will need my permission for all of it. If you expect to be treated like a prince, then give up right now. Go on, try your best. You never know. I might just change my mind and teach you a little something about our family's secret sword techniques. He gritted his teeth, feeling deeply insulted by that attitude. How ridiculous. You want to teach me? Teach the man who was once the trainer for the undefeated knights, the master of the founding king who built this nation. Teach me, he continued. Seeing your fat jiggle like that, you must be furious. Adrian stood up. Uncle, let's make a bet. Within half a year, I will make you acknowledge me. He told himself he had to shatter that arrogant look in the man's eyes. He smirked confidently. If I fail, I'll do whatever you say. However, if I succeed, you must grant me one request. The man smiled like a predator eyeing its prey. Interesting. Very well. I should at least have something for entertainment. Suddenly, he gasped for breath, his body feeling slightly different. I talked a big game, but... His eyes widened in panic. This damn body. I'll have to use mana. Green energy erupted around Adrian. First, I'll focus on burning off all this body fat. He stomped on the ground with explosive force, his heavy body moving with unnatural speed. The man's eyes widened in genuine shock. Oh, that kid. Don't tell me. His hand shot out and grabbed the boy. You actually managed to create core magic. He stood up straight, feigning innocence. Oh, this. He held up a hand wreathed in green flame. Yes, I succeeded in creating it not too long ago. What's wrong, Uncle? Regretting our bet already. His expression shifted from shock to fury. What were you thinking creating core magic? No, forget that. Where the hell did you learn that method for training core magic? Looking at you, it seems you don't even know what you've done wrong. Core magic is a crude technique that only low-level mercenaries learn. The words left him stunned and he blurted out, What? His face was a mask of pure shock, his eyes wide and vacant as sweat dripped down his neck. He couldn't process this information. What do you mean? The man replied coldly. It'll be faster if you see for yourself. With a fluid movement, the Count raised his hand. Green energy swirled around it, forming a perfect, brilliant circle. Watch closely, Adrian. He analyzed the scene internally. Magic in the form of a circle. Suddenly, a giant blade of green energy shot out from the Count's hand, slashing through the air with terrifying power. The wind pressure alone nearly knocked him off his feet. He explained about the modern era. Times really have changed. Have you ever heard the phrase, a difference in class? Eris possesses the ability to shatter the sword aura produced by core magic. Furthermore, training in Eris is far easier and more stable than maintaining a core. That's precisely why those who stubbornly clung to core magic techniques completely collapsed 100 years ago. In this day and age, no one is interested in using core magic anymore. The scene shifts to a short time later where he is engrossed in reading a book, Basic Theory of Eris. Times really have changed. Mages use circles while knights weave chains to gather mana. A knight's rank is divided by the number of chains woven single chain. Double chain, triple chain, quad chain, and pentachain. He lowered his hand, thinking to himself, I guess it's not complete and utter nonsense. Anchin Gen. I feel like I've heard that name somewhere before. Somewhere. His eyes widened as a memory from centuries ago surfaced. A rugged man in a dark cloak stood in a blizzard holding a glowing sword. A long, long time ago, a voice from the past rang out. So you're the famous sword saint. My name is Sword Demon Anchin Gen. I've come to see who is more worthy of the title Sword Saint. He realized the connection. There was once a guy who came looking for me using some strange techniques. It wasn't swordsmanship, nor was it magic. Man, that name sounds familiar. What ended up happening to that guy anyway? The scene shifts to the next day. As he was preparing to train, the Count's voice rang out. You read that book all night, didn't you? You realize it now, don't you? Just how foolish your choice was. He spoke up immediately. Father, I don't feel I've made the slightest mistake. The man sighed. You either don't understand the situation or you just don't want to admit it. He clenched his fist. The green flames flared more intensely. You see, not all core magic is the same. The phrase, a difference in class. Have you ever heard of it? The Count looked down at him completely unimpressed. I wonder what the hell you're blabbering about. I occasionally see fools like you among the mercenaries, the kind who delude themselves into thinking they're some kind of hero. For centuries, do you know what happened to all of them? They all faded away, unable to even surpass 2 chains. If you think you're any different from them, then try defeating a double-chained knight. When you do, I will become your guardian just as your mother wished. He smirked in response, his confidence unshaken. Having you as a guardian? Would that really be good for me? I'm not so sure. The wind swept across the training grounds as the atmosphere grew tense. Did you just question my qualifications to be your guardian? I am the Count of this kingdom, commander of the Northern Forces, master of the Black Spear Brigade, and one of the 5 Silver Lions who serves the king. A man who has woven 4 chains. A 4-chain knight. Belvin Hess. That is the name of the man who will stand behind you. Are those qualifications sufficient? A warning. Green energy trailed behind him like a comet. He gritted his teeth, his face contorted with effort. Immediately, the guards standing by drew their swords to protect their master. Stand back. The Count's aura sent shockwaves through the dust cloud. The Count looked down at his struggling nephew, his eyes a mix of amusement and warning. You'd better not go back on your word later. A moment later, Adrian collapsed onto the cold stone floor of his room, his body completely exhausted. He lay spread-eagled, his chest heaving as he gasped for air. I almost died. A voice interrupted his recovery. That's enough for today. His words echoed in his head. The Count had smiled, a dangerous glint in his eyes. To think you would dare challenge me, believing you would gain my acknowledgement, and with that kind of courage alone. What, a double-chained knight? You'd be lucky to even defeat a single-chained knight. Inside the palace, an exhausted Adrian muttered to himself, that devilish bastard. He opened the door to see a man with round-rimmed glasses. My prince, I have been waiting for you. His eyes widened. The royal physician. Why are you here? He thought in a panic. The physician bowed his head deeply and humbly. It is an honor that you remember a lowly person such as myself. The queen has ordered me to treat you with healing magic. Now, your highness, this way! Adrian shouted, his face pale with horror. He shoved the bewildered doctor toward the door. No, I don't need it. Get out now. Slam. He forced the doctor out. He leaned against the heavy door, panting. Are you trying to make all the hell I went through today meaningless? The scene then shifts to a luxurious dining room. The door opens. Brother, are you here? Adrian froze mid-bite. Standing in the doorway was a handsome man with wavy brown hair. Adrian looked at him and thought, who the hell is this guy? A nearby knight leaned in to announce, that is the 3rd prince, my lord. He wondered to himself, the 3rd prince. That guy. The 3rd prince walked in. I heard you had an accident, brother, but you look healthier. And then I thought, what a shame. Adrian ignored the snide remark and continued shoveling food into his mouth. So, what do you want? Did you just come here to pick a fight? Surely a prince has better things to do, right? The 3rd prince's expression immediately darkened, his eyes flashing with suppressed malice. Says the fool who stabbed himself with his own sword. And you have the nerve to talk? He regained his composure, his gaze still fixed on Adrian. There's the matter of you fighting a double-chained knight. About that, what would you say to me being your opponent? The dining room was enveloped in a silent tension as the 3rd prince, Julian, left, leaving behind a smug, arrogant expression. Adrian remained seated at the long table, staring blankly at the space where his younger brother had just stood, his brow furrowed in genuine confusion. What was with that guy? Why are all the descendants of House Leonbeck like this? The nearby knight spoke up, explaining with the reverence reserved for a genius, Your Highness, the 3rd Prince Julian has been renowned for his talent in swordsmanship since he was a child. But Adrian remained unimpressed, almost bored. What, that kid? He added. At only 14 years old, he wove 2 chains. That speed is truly incredible. Suddenly, the heavy silence was broken by an anxious stutter. Your Highness, I apologize for the intrusion, but many letters have arrived for you. Adrian blinked at the mountain of paper. Letters. He picked one up, his mind reeling. Why are all these people who previously couldn't have cared less about this body, suddenly interested now? He tore open an envelope, his eyes scanning the contents, and his expression shifted from confusion to a cold realization. The letter read, I apologize for the incident last time. Your Highness, I humbly request a duel. If you are still having trouble finding a training partner, please grant me the first opportunity. The implication was painfully obvious. A dark scene flooded Adrian's mind. They're vultures circling a corpse. He realized the truth. In short, this is a chance to legally beat the crap out of that bastard. Adrian lowered the letter, a vein pulsing on his temple, but then a twisted, cunning smile spread across his face. It seems I've become quite an easy target. The maid whispered, Yes. Adrian gave an order, his eyes gleaming with a predator's light. These people who just sent this pile of letters, write down every single one of their names for me. The scene changes to a stone-paved training ground under the harsh sun. A crude wooden sword falls at Adrian's feet. The Count stood looming over him. Pick up the sword. For this bet to be valid, you have to at least know a little about swordsmanship, right? I don't want to hear any excuses about you losing because you weren't taught the basics. Adrian grumbled to himself as he knelt to pick up the weapon. You could have just handed it to me. What a disagreeable personality. He grips the hilt of the sword and lifts it. A jolt of electricity runs through his entire body. His eyes fly open so wide they're almost all white. My pupils are trembling. My muscles ache. His body goes rigid in agony. The Count stares at him, stunned by the sudden reaction. Wait a minute. You didn't receive any healing magic? His face remains stern. If you're a Knight, Count, you should know this. Healing magic only restores muscles to their original state. It doesn't strengthen them. The Count sighed. All right, then. In any case, that's not what I intended to talk about today. I don't plan on demonstrating this many times, so watch closely. This is the technique that the Knights of the Kingdom learn, to build the foundation of the kingdom's training swordsmanship. The Count moves. In an instant, he vanishes, leaving only an afterimage of his blade slicing through the air. Multiple slashes occur at once, forming an illusion of blue light. A blast of wind pressure erupts outward as the Count finishes his form in a perfect stance. Adrian is sitting on the ground, jaw agape, looking up. His eyes reflect the residual energy. You just said. That's the sword-style knights learn to build their foundation. The Count sheathes his sword. Because it's a training swordsmanship, it may lack sharpness, but it's faithful to the fundamentals. There's no better style for learning the sword. Considering your talent, it might be too much for... Ha ha ha. A low chuckle escapes Adrian's lips. It grows louder as he stands there, clutching his stomach and laughing heartily at the sky. The Count looks at him as if he's finally lost his mind, but Adrian isn't laughing at the absurdity of the situation. He's laughing at the irony of history no matter how much time has passed. The great swordsmanship that once beheaded a frantic dragon is now being treated as a mere training technique. The Count adds, of course, this alone won't be enough to win the bet. After you've mastered the basics, you can ask the Queen to hire another teacher, or... Adrian cuts him off decisively. He hoists the heavy wooden sword onto his shoulder. A fire of determination burns in his eyes. There's no need. I won't learn any other swordsmanship because this is more than enough. The Count looks back skeptically. Suit yourself. Adrian grips the hilt. He swings the sword. The swing is slow, heavy, and pathetic. The sword wobbles in midair. Adrian grinds his teeth, sweat pouring down his face. The truth is, the dragon-slaying style is now considered a common training technique. I hate to admit it, but this is probably a natural phenomenon, because that dragon-slaying sword lacks the dragon-slaying will. Those who have abandoned mind magic and forgotten how to channel their will into the blade could never have the vision, and to recognize the true value of the dragon-slaying sword. Adrian's train of thought is cut short by a wooden sword. The Count blocks his swing. Power doesn't go into the sword just because you tense your arms. Have you already forgotten what I just showed you? Into your core and your legs, too. Adrian drops to one knee, panting, his body screaming in protest. That's right. Right now I'm just a weak, clumsy body, even when imitating a pale imitation of the dragon-slaying style. He plants the wooden sword into the ground and pushes himself up. I will prove that the dragon-slaying style is not some worn-out relic cast aside like a tattered shoe. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. A week passes. The layers of fat on his body begin to shift, tightening under the relentless pressure. and a month goes by. In the darkness of his room, Adrian meditates. A radiant blue sphere of mana glows between his hands. His face is slimmer, his jawline beginning to show. Successfully changed physical condition. After arduous training, the trait pathological obesity has changed to common obesity. Metabolism has become more active due to the change in physical condition. The clumsy trait has disappeared. Training efficiency has increased significantly. Your physical condition has changed after continuously accumulating mana. The mana sensitivity disorder trait has disappeared, and the mana sensitivity trait has been acquired. I swing the sword more naturally than a month ago. The wooden sword cuts through the air with a high-pitched whistle. Swoosh! The Count shouts from the side, "Stop!" Adrian's eyes glow with a strange blue electrical current. He doesn't hear the command. Stronger than yesterday, more perfect than a moment ago. The Count roars, "Didn't you hear me say stop?" But he had already entered a trance-like state. He raises the wooden sword high. It groans under the tremendous pressure from his grip and the mana flowing into it. Crack! The wooden sword shatters. Rain begins to fall, turning the training ground into a slippery mud pit. The sky darkens, illuminated only by flashes of lightning. The Count stands and watches. He sees blood dripping from the prince's hands, mixing with the rainwater on the cold flagstones. Adrian blinks, suddenly snapping out of it. His blue eyes are wide with exhaustion. The thick wooden training post is split apart. It has exploded outward as if struck by lightning. The delayed reaction from his final slash has manifested. The Count rushes forward, grabbing Adrian's shoulders. "You idiot, training on a day like this! If that were a real sword, you wouldn't have gotten away unscathed. The information system reports you have fully awakened from a state of extreme focus. However, the body still remembers that feeling of reaching its limit." Adrian stares at his own hands, numb with pain. The new trait, hyperfocus, has been acquired. A weak, delirious laugh rises from his throat. "Ha ha! If I focus like that again, I might actually get struck by lightning and die." Thump, thump. His legs give out and he collapses unconscious. The panicked knights shout, "Your Highness!" But the Count catches him. He looks down at his nephew's face, now peaceful despite the harsh training. The contempt that once filled the Count's eyes is gone. In its place is a complex mixture of concern. This stubborn brat. Adrian slowly opens his eyes. He sits up thinking to himself, "Was I unconscious?" He rubs his head, pondering. "I must have underestimated the limits of this body. When I was a sword, I achieved everything possible. Unsung war hero. Sword saint, king of mercenaries, the founding king who led wars to glory, elevating both body and soul. I guided the heroes of Gruhan, but that memory is tinged with a hollow realization. A circle of light illuminates the loneliness of his former existence. He was a wise advisor and an excellent teacher, but an existence that was forever a third party. He looks down at his own human hands, rough-scarred and trembling from exhaustion. That is why I have swung my sword, until I reached that realm. Intoxicated by the feeling of making every drop of sweat and the fruits of my labor my own, at this rate, this weak body will soon collapse. I need to balance my mind and body." Time passed in the silence of meditation and focus. It's been over a month since I formed my mana core. I've gathered quite a bit of mana since then, so I should be able to move on to the next stage soon. A notification window appears. 4. Through persistent effort, you have successfully accumulated mana to a certain level. Your body can now withstand a little more mana. Your mana core has expanded. Your body can now withstand a little more mana. Your physique has changed. Due to the expanded mana core, Adrian's eyes snapped open, shining with an intense blue light. It's done. Now then, let's see. With a deep breath, he swung his sword. A notification popped up. You have reached the level of swordsmanship. You can now use the most basic level of aura. With this, I can handle the basics. Many days later, the castle courtyard bustled with knights and whispers. The Count looked at Adrian and said, "A rumor is spreading throughout the kingdom." He immediately asked back, "A rumor?" Count Belvenhart looked completely exhausted and annoyed. "It's about your bet." "Ugh, that bet. Even I'm getting fed up with it. Wouldn't it be better to just quickly find a dueling opponent, Count?" Adrian looked up unbothered. "Oh, that. As for my opponent, I've already decided who it will be. An image of his younger brother appears. More importantly, Count, it will be difficult for me to face a double circle right away. So how about I fight a few single circles first?" The Count replied, "That's up to you." "Yes." Then he turned to a knight. "Cax, how is that matter I asked you about?" Cax bowed and presented a folder. Yes, Your Highness. I have arranged it as you requested. This is the list of those who have sent you duel requests. However, Your Highness, are you planning to spar with them? And Adrian immediately replied, so what if I am? Cax's expression darkened. Most of these men hold a grudge against you. They might try to harm you under the guise of a sparring match. Adrian smiled. His eyes were relaxed and knowing. I know that. That's why you have to be the referee for me, Count. The Count silently looked at him. Adrian, with a wooden practice sword on his shoulder, grinned widely. I'm not asking for anything grand. Just make sure no one dies during the match. You can grant me a favor that small, can't you? A few days later, on the day of the first match, the blazing sun beat down on the palace. A young, brown-haired man walked towards the gate, sweat drenching his face as he mumbled, This is the first prince's palace, where that bastard lives. He clenched a piece of paper, his face a mask of anger and anxiety. A notification board introduces him, Taylor Tellum, the second son of an ordinary baronial family. A few years ago, the scene shifts to a luxurious ballroom bathed in golden light. A younger Adrian, fatter and drunk, laughing maniacally, pointing a greasy finger at a shabby noble family. Look at that mess, from their clothes to their attitude. He reeks of a country bumpkin. Look at him all giddy just because he got to come to a royal party. He thinks to himself, my father and my brother suffered an indelible insult from that damned prince. Our family's honor was dragged through the mud, and my father and brother became the laughingstock of the aristocracy to this very day. Adrian Leonberg. Today I will make you pay dearly for that day. He enters the arena where Adrian is waiting, flanked by the imposing figure of Count Belvenhart. Taylor gives a stiff bow. I offer my greetings to the prince. First Prince Adrian Leonberg. He draws his sword with a sharp ring of steel. I am Taylor's second son of the Tellum family. I am a single-circle knight apprentice, and a practitioner of the Tellum family's swordsmanship. Adrian looked at him with a bored, emotionless expression, then gestured. Good heavens. Why so formal for a sparring match? It's not even an official duel. By the way, is he really a knight? He looks incredibly weak. Taylor's face twitched with anger. Just as the rumors say. He's rude, arrogant, doesn't know his place, and is ignorant. Enough! Count Belvenhart's deep voice cut through the tension. He stepped forward, his authority absolute. I understand how you feel, but the match hasn't even begun. Withdraw your intent. Taylor was startled, his face lighting up as if meeting a celebrity, realizing he had gone too far. Count Belvenhart, it is a pleasure to meet you. Then the Count looked at Adrian. You should have behaved better in the past. Adrian looked away, annoyed. Geez, always bringing up the past everywhere all the time. The Count raised a hand. Both of you to your positions. The match begins. Taylor covered his body in a stream of aura, a faint blue color. He moved with dizzying speed, leaving streaks of light as he dashed around the arena. Instantly, they clashed their blades, locking together. Metal ground against metal. Taylor glared at Adrian, his eyes filled with tension. Adrian's expression was calm, almost indifferent as he blocked the blow with a simple, efficient movement. He commented, too many wasted movements. Taylor's eyes widened in shock. Huh! He saw Adrian still standing firm with ease. This is the Manhwa. Suddenly, he was sent flying back and blurted out, a Manhwa can't possibly block a mana circle. Adrian replied casually, Is it because you only have one circle? I just felt a slight tingle in my hand. Suddenly, a low vibration emanated from Taylor's weapon. The knights watching from the sidelines took a sharp breath. That sound from the sword, could it be? Count Belvenhart's eyes widened in disbelief. Impossible! A sword's cry. Taylor charged. He charged again, screaming in desperation, Impossible! He swung his sword down with all his might. Adrian blocked it again. Sparks flew. After an intense struggle, it was clear neither of them could be taken down. Adrian, slightly tired, thought to himself, They say a sword's cry is incompatible with psyche magic. That's definitely true. I feel like the magic could backlash at any moment. However, he looked up at Taylor, who was panting with rage. Taylor's face twisted into a mask of pure malice. You said you were the second son of Baron Thelheim. Right? Adrian raised his sword, his demeanor changing. You need to cool your head a bit. The scene shifts to Adrian's inner world. Darkness surrounds him. Breathe. Focus on your senses. Awaken. Whether a demon sword, a holy sword, or any other name. My soul's psyche magic has accepted a colossal will. A color has been painted onto the colorless psyche magic. The dormant dragon slayer's will has awakened, the sword's memories from its last use, and the essence of a heart forged to kill dragons returns to the arena. The blue aura surrounding Adrian shifted to a blazing, bloodthirsty red. The Dragon Slayer Psyche magic has been activated, forged to kill dragons. This is the true power of the Dragon Slayer sword. The energy erupted upwards, forming a terrifying pillar of red fire. The silhouette of a dragon appeared behind Adrian, its jaws wide in a silent roar. It silently made his opponent tremble. Count Belvin's face turned pale, his composure completely shattered. "Stop!" But it was too late. Adrian lunged forward, his eyes gleaming like a demon's. The sword carved a great red arc of destruction. Before the match, a memory flashed through his mind. "Count, there's something I need to ask you before we spar. If it looks like I'm about to kill my opponent, you have to stop me then, okay?" Back in the present, a blinding explosion of blue lightning erupted as the Count intercepted the attack. The fierce resistance from his intervention created powerful shockwaves, shaking the stone floor. Adrian was thrown backward. The surrounding knights who had been watching in stunned silence rushed forward with their swords drawn. They surrounded the Count in a panic. One knight yelled, his voice trembling, "Count Belvin, what have you done?" Depending on the circumstances, you could be charged with attempted regicide. Adrian struggled to his feet, his vision blurring and his head spinning. He commanded, "Stand down." I asked him to do it. The knights gasped. "Your Highness." Adrian's inner thoughts were a chaotic mix of confusion and pain as he stared at his trembling hands. I did ask him, it's true, but I didn't tell him to knock me unconscious. Thud. His eyes rolled back and he collapsed face first onto the floor. Darkness enveloped him. The knight's voice echoed, "Your Highness." Time passed in a void of deep blue energy. Inside Adrian's body, his psyche magic beat with a struggling rhythm, trying to contain the power that had nearly torn it apart. Adrian woke up with a gasp, sitting bolt upright in bed, his nightshirt drenched in sweat. He clutched his chest. He felt the steady rhythm inside him. I really thought my psyche magic was about to shatter. His power is on a completely different level from some no-name red knight, and I took a direct hit from it. Luckily, it seems there are no long-term side effects. But anyway, in the end everything turned out fine. I won the match after all. The door opened, casting a long shadow into the room. "What are you smiling about?" The Count stood there. His figure was imposing in the light from the hallway. Adrian asked, "What brings you all the way here, Count?" Adrian asked casually, though he could feel the tension. The Count stood looming by the bed, his expression a mixture of anger and confusion. "What in the hell was that? What was that unholy swordplay? I never taught you a style like that." Adrian looked straight into his eyes without flinching, his own blue eyes calm. "I was simply being true to the nature of the sword." The Count stared at him, stunned into silence. He thought to himself, talking about the nature of the sword when the kid's never even been in a real battle. The room seemed to darken as the Count spoke his next words. "So the nature of the sword as you see it is killing intent. As crude and unpleasant as it is, that is also a truth." Adrian looked at him surprised. "That's unexpected. I thought you were going to lecture me about how the path of the sword is its own perfection or something and then ramble on for a while." The Count smirked, a rare expression of a soldier's pragmatism. "I am a soldier, not a knight. I walk the path of victory, and not the path of righteousness. However, your swordsmanship has gone too far. If your killing intent is too strong, you won't be able to distinguish friend from foe." Adrian sat silently listening as the Count accurately analyzed his intentions. "And that's why you caused all that commotion. Right to fix it." The Count crossed his arms, his eyes gleaming with a stern promise. "I will observe you. I will see whether you are devoured by the demon within." After the 3 days of sparring had ended, Taylor Thelheim was exhausted and defeated. Adrian held a practice sword without a single scratch on him. "You said your name was Taylor Thelheim, right? Well done." For the past 3 days, he had to block a sword with uncontrollable killing intent. For 3 days of struggle, he truly went through a lot. Adrian observed him and said, "But it's a real shame, isn't it? You would have felt much better if you could have at least beaten me once, but you couldn't." Taylor stammered, unable to refute it. Adrian turned to a maid standing nearby. "Bring that over here." The maid came forward, struggling under the weight of a large wooden chest. Seeing this, he asked, "Prince, what is this?" With an unusually serious expression, Adrian said, "I heard I did some terrible things to you in the past. I don't know if this will make up for it, but take this back to the Baron for me." Taylor held the chest stunned. Adrian scratched his cheek awkwardly. "It's not much, just some gold and a letter. Now go on. Travel safely." As Taylor walked towards the gate, his figure blurring into the brilliant sunset, He shouted. "Thank you, Prince," Adrian thought to himself. "I'm under no obligation to clean up the mess that bastard made, but still, if you're going to make someone work, you should at least pay them properly." A few days later, the kingdom was rife with rumors. The majestic white castle stood tall under the blue sky, but the whispers in the gardens were filled with malice. "The damn prince's sparring match has become the talk of the kingdom. His arrogance has dug his own grave. The first prince will surely pay dearly for his past transgressions. I wonder how much humiliation he'll have to endure." However, confusion soon set in. As the days passed, the news everyone was waiting for never came. Even after waiting for many days, the expected news did not arrive. Instead, positive rumors began to spread. "Oh, you ask how the duel went," said a knight in gleaming golden armor. "Well, it seems there was some misunderstanding. The first prince isn't as bad as the rumors say," a green-haired man added. "Both sides tried their best in the duel, and that was that." The blonde-haired man laughed. "Threats, I've only just come to realize the prince's sincerity. Those who were expecting malice were horrified. What is this? The royal family must have paid them to shut up." Bam! Adrian slammed his fist on a wooden barrel. "Paid them to shut up, my ass? He's only quiet because he's ashamed he lost to me. These nobles, don't they have anything better to do? They should be doing something useful with their time." The count smirked. "Do you really have any room to talk?" Adrian spotted Cass passing by and grabbed his shoulder. "Hey, when you go out, make sure you spread the results of the duel, too." "Got it." Terrified Cass nodded frantically. "I'll do it." Adrian watched him run off satisfied. "The rumors should die down now, right?" A maid looked at him worriedly. "There's a rumor that the prince threatened him to falsify the results of the duel." "Right." Adrian stared into the void. His face darkened with frustration. "Forget it. Forget all of it. I'm just going to train, okay?" He swung his sword, a huge arc of blue mana cutting through the air. He moved at a dizzying speed, blue flames trailing behind him as he spun and attacked continuously. The air vibrated with the power of his magic. He was a moving blur, drenched in sweat, his focus absolute as he vented all his frustration through his blade. Later, under the clear blue sky, Cass approached him, holding a file. Adrian asked, "How many more duel opponents are there?" Cass looked at the list, his expression serious. "The one coming today is the last one." Adrian caught his breath. "The knight apprentices aren't enough for me anymore." A knight continued, "Well, this last one is a knight who has truly mastered the sword. Someone who wasn't content with just polishing her family's sword techniques, but a talent who joined a knight order to train herself." Hearing this, he said cheerfully, "A knight apprentice of the Iron Lion Knights, you say?" The name echoed with considerable weight. Awen Kogan. The heavy wooden doors of the training ground swung open. The sound of armored footsteps echoed on the stone floor. A figure stepped in, bathed in the light from the entrance. An observer watched the approaching figure. "It's her, isn't it?" Seeing the emblem on the armor, another replied, "It has to be. The rose of the thorned cliff, who has broken the heart of every man." The knights whispering on the sidelines blushed behind their visors. She must be an absolute beauty. Just think, even a woman like that has come here herself. In a way, the prince has some talent, doesn't he? Still, wouldn't it be hilarious if the prince got humiliated by her? She stopped. A woman of breathtaking beauty was revealed. Her expression was cold, disciplined, and utterly unapproachable. The renowned Iron Lion Knights are one of the kingdom's top orders, famous for both their prestige and the skill of their apprentice knights. Awen Kogayan, a promising talent, had just been confirmed as an official member. The scene shifts back to reality, where Adrian stands with a panicked expression. Why would a genius like that come looking for me for a duel? The silver-haired knight, with a doubtful expression, delivered the harsh truth. There was a slight misunderstanding between His Highness and Lady Awen in the past. He immediately retorted, "A misunderstanding like hell. Look at me, I'm sure I was the one who picked a fight with her. Just tell me, what the hell did I do back then?" The maid hesitated, her eyes darting about nervously. "Well, Your Highness, you harassed Lady Awen." Adrian's face went blank with horror. His eyes lost focus as reality sank in. This crazy bastard. A flashback began, showing an obese, arrogant version of Adrian staring at Awen, at a younger Awen with eyes full of lust. He grabbed her by the shoulder. "Your name is Awen, right? You really are quite beautiful, just as the rumors say. How about it? If you want, you can become my personal maid." A sharp, decisive voice cut through the air as Awen slapped his hand away. "Prince, a knight is not your personal property." The fat prince's face twisted with humiliation and anger, veins bulging on his forehead. "You ugly thing!" Back in the present, Adrian listened to the story with a soulless expression, feeling a little dead inside. "That is what I was told," the maid said.
That sounds exactly like the twisted pickup line of a rotten bastard.
"Yep, this is my karma. Because there's no way in hell anyone could look at her and call her ugly." She bowed with perfect military precision, her hand over her chest. "It's been a while, Prince. You haven't changed a bit, I see." He replied awkwardly, "I wouldn't say that. You know, I've changed a lot." He thought to himself, to the point where I'm a completely different person on the inside. Yep, this is all my karma. Heavy footsteps approached, and a maid announced, "Count Belvin H. has arrived." He stepped forward and asked her, "And you are?" She replied respectfully, "Awin Kogain, apprentice knight of the Iron Lion Knights. Greetings, Count Belvin H." The count leaned in slightly. "Be careful. The prince's sword is quite treacherous, you know." Adrian happened to overhear this betrayal. This twisted face. "Since when did you trade away your neutrality as an observer, Count?" The count ignored him. He closed his eyes with a satisfied smirk before opening them to address the arena. "Now both of you take your positions. As of this moment, the duel begins." Adrian watched as she drew near. His smile widened. Let's see the skills of this Iron Lion cub. Awin made the first move. In a flash, she lunged forward, lowering her center of gravity and drawing her sword. His eyes tracked her movements with ease. Her movements are pretty sharp. Clang, Awin unleashed a barrage of attacks, her sword wreathed in blinding blue lightning. Adrian parried, but the speed and ferocious intensity of her assault forced him to retreat. He let out a low growl, feeling the strain on his untrained body. The mana's starting to backlash. Awin pressed her advantage, her violet eyes locked onto him with fierce determination. She struck again. Adrian was pushed back, his feet skidding on the stone. I'm being completely swept up in her rhythm. This is not good. A crimson energy began to swirl around Adrian's chest. The atmosphere changed instantly as a terrifying red aura erupted from him. Dragon-slaying demonic arts activated. Awin froze, her eyes widening in genuine shock. She saw the violent, chaotic energy and hesitated for a split second. That sword! Seeing her momentary fatigue, Adrian spoke up. I guess not all sigils are created equal. You're certainly in a different league from the rest of that rabble. As they fought, a golden interface flickered into his vision. Power of Judgment now available for limited use. A status window appeared next to Awin Kogain. Female 19 years old. Apprentice knight. Aptitude swordsmanship. A archery. B. Traits. Sword. Genius. Competitive unparalleled beauty. Tough exterior. Soft interior. Pure. Adrian's lips curled into a smirk. His crimson eyes glowed in the shadow of his own power. The fact that I can see this with a limited ability means she's either weaker than me or of equal strength. He stomped his foot on the ground. The real fight starts now. Adrian lunged, bringing his sword down in a powerful overhead cleave. They were swept into a dance of destruction, red and blue energies clashing violently against the castle walls. As the sky darkened, both of them were breathing heavily. Sweat dripped from Adrian's chin, and Awin was also clearly exhausted, her chest heaving. The sun had begun to set, dyeing the arena in a deep amber hue. Suddenly a steel blade came between them. Count Belvin H. stepped into their midst, his sword drawn. Stop! That is enough for today. We will resume this match tomorrow. Adrian wiped his mouth, looking disappointed. Tch, I was just about to end it. But Awin, not to be outdone, retorted while catching her breath. What a coincidence, I was just about to do the same thing. Sparks flew between their gazes once more. Adrian challenged, Is that so? Want to keep going? Awin narrowed her eyes, purple energy emanating from her. If His Highness insists, I can go all day. The Count bellowed, silencing them both. Enough! It is far too late for this. Both of you get treatment at once. A mage stepped forward. Your Highness, I will treat you right away. Oh dear, you have a bruise here as well. Nearby Awin was also receiving treatment, but she turned her head away, refusing to meet his gaze. Her expression was a mixture of exhaustion and stubbornness. They exchanged one last silent glance before going their separate ways. Under the rising sun, Awin walked with determination, thinking to herself, I absolutely will not lose. Several days later, a winner had yet to be decided. The spectating knights murmured in disbelief, Is it really the third day already? A knight replied, To be honest, I'm quite surprised. He continued, I've heard a lot about Lady Arwen's skills, but the first princes are just as impressive. Hopefully, we'll get a result in the arena today. The two stood opposite each other, swords lowered but ready. Adrian broke the silence. Before we begin the next round, I have something to say. Arwen looked at him coldly. Don't tell me you're planning to apologize now. I won't accept an apology. Adrian's expression changed. I see. You intend to reclaim your wounded pride with your own strength. That's an admirable thought, but, well, that's not it. Since we're fighting so fiercely like this, shouldn't there be a prize? Arwen tilted her head in confusion. Adrian declared loudly for all to hear, how about the loser grants the winner one wish? If they're told to kneel, they must kneel. If they're told to bow their head and apologize, they must do it. A knight from the sidelines shouted in panic, Your Highness, as a member of the royal family. You cannot say such things. Please retract your statement. But Adrian waved his hand without looking back. Outsiders stay out of this. What do you think, Arwen? She closed her eyes for a moment, then stepped forward. Her hand rested on her sword. Though I am but a knight in training, I am also a member of the Leonbeck Royal Knights loyal to the crown. I dare not commit such disrespect towards the prince. However, if that is what His Highness permits, I suppose I have the right to claim the prize of this wager. Adrian laughed loudly, his body once again erupting in red flames. Well said, don't you dare go back on your word later. They clashed instantly. This time Adrian held nothing back. The red mana roared as he accelerated. Arwen parried the blow, but her eyes widened. He's too fast! He wasn't this fast yesterday! Was he hiding his true strength? Adrian's eyes glowed a demonic red. He smirked, a giant phantom dragon roaring behind him. Dragon Slayer magic. He unleashed a relentless barrage of powerful blows. Arwen raised her sword to block the attacks, sending dust flying. He landed a slash that grazed her cheek, and fresh drops of blood appeared on her beautiful face. Adrian didn't pause. He launched a second faster attack. Adrian's sword cut through all her defenses, his face a mask of pure concentration and power. The impact created a huge cloud of dust obscuring their vision. As the dust settled, the victorious figure emerged. The setting sun cast long shadows. Arwen was on her knees, her sword broken in two. The spectators watched in stunned silence. Count Bovenhast's eyes were wide. Arwen stared at the ground. Her breathing was ragged, her pupils trembling. This can't be happening. I lost the bet. The reality of her defeat weighed heavily on her. Adrian looked down at Arwen Cogain. I want you. The position of royal guard for the first prince who was notoriously known as the kingdom's degenerate scoundrel. Contrary to my worries, the job wasn't that difficult. The scene shifts to the first meeting between this guard and his master. The guard bowed respectfully, his face a mask of perfect professionalism as he introduced himself. Are you the new royal guard? The guard replied dutifully. Yes, I look forward to serving you, your highness. However, the prince sitting before him was obese, slovenly, and radiated an air of arrogance. He simply propped his chin on his hand, looking bored. All right, I'm counting on you. But he never threw violent tantrums arbitrarily, as the rumors claimed. Under the bright sun in the castle courtyard, the guard watched the chubby prince run past him, panting heavily, sweat flying in a desperate attempt to change his physique. The guard watched silently, his expression firm yet thoughtful, unrealistic. Contrary to the rumors, heavy rain lashed against the gray flagstones of the training grounds, blurring the world with cold streaks of water. Despite the downpour, a lone figure stood before a wooden training dummy. It was Adrian, soaked to the bone. He swung a wooden sword with relentless determination. The guard watched from the sidelines. Someone mumbled, "The rain's getting too heavy," while another worriedly added, "Shouldn't we stop the prince now?" Suddenly a loud thunderclap tore through the air. The wooden dummy shattered under the prince's blow. The guard's eyes widened in alarm as he saw him stumble dangerously. Your Highness, be careful. But as lightning illuminated the scene, it revealed Adrian's exhausted but blissful smile amidst the shattered wood. The guard was struck by a profound realization. I have a feeling that the prince will become a great man. That's what I used to think. Now the duel was over. Adrian stood tall, casting a long shadow over the defeated knightess. He looked down at her and made his demand with shocking bluntness. I want you. The reaction was immediate and chaotic. On the sidelines, the knights gasped in horror, their faces flushing red. What? One exclaimed, while another covered his mouth, whispering, What a scandal. The guard, who had been watching with a stern gaze, had to swallow hard. Doubt crept into his mind. Did I misjudge him? Arwen, humiliated and trembling, looked up, her violet eyes wide with disbelief and anger as the prince's shadow fell over her. Is that truly what His Highness desires? Adrian stood firm. He looked at the kneeling woman not with lust, but with a cool, appraising gaze. Of course, as you are now. You're just an ordinary knight in training who can't even defeat a wretched prince. What I want is the potential and future of the knight named Awen Kogayan. Therefore, Awen Kogayan become my knight. I need a knight who will follow me. Not a knight who protects me by royal decree, but a knight who belongs to me and me alone. Adrian activated his vision, looking at the golden status window floating beside her. Swordsmanship Aptitude A. Trait Swordsmanship Genius. Pure competitive spirit. He smiled. And from what I see, you have quite the talent for the sword. Awen stared, stunned. Her face smudged by a cut on her cheek as she processed the offer. Memories flooded her mind. She was standing in a training hall, surrounded by men yet completely alone. I became the knight I always dreamed of being, but the whispers of others echoed in her memory. That child. The rumors are true. She's certainly got the looks. She recalled the struggles, the clash of steel, the sweat, the desperate efforts to prove herself. No one treated me like a knight, so I worked twice as hard as everyone else. She saw herself standing over a defeated male opponent, declared the victor, but she still looked unhappy. Even when she defeated every knight in training her age with horrifying speed and skill, the whispers never stopped. Men saw her not as a warrior, but as a display piece. Isn't Lady Awen our walking flower vase? Protecting a beautiful woman like Awen is a knight's honor. That realization had crushed her. I can't become a true knight. But back in the present, Awen looked up at Adrian, tears welling in the corners of her eyes. A faint blush colored her cheeks, not from romance, but from the overwhelming emotion of finally being truly seen. She looked at the prince bathed in sunlight. His expression was serious and resolute. He wants my potential and my future as a knight. Is he being sincere? She stood up and faced him. Please promise me one thing. Treat me not as a woman, but as a knight. If you do, I will follow your highness's will. Adrian answered without hesitation. All right, I promise. Awen immediately dropped to one knee. She bowed her head, swearing her loyalty under the golden light. I, Awen, eldest daughter of House Kogayan, do swear my fealty to Prince Adrian Leonbeck, and I pledge my sword and the rest of my life to your highness. Count Belvin H. watched in silence with a complex expression. Adrian drew a glittering steel blade as he, the rightful heir of Leonbeck, performed an impromptu ceremony. In the name of Adrian Leonberg, I knight you. Be brave, be courteous, and be loyal. However, the nobility could not comprehend such purity. In the days that followed, rumors spread like a plague through the castle corridors. Swear loyalty to that bastard. Does that make any sense at all? And it's an oath made over a bet, no less. We have to nullify it somehow. A blonde knight whispered to the man, but I hear she refused our help. The whispers grew darker and more obscene. Oh goodness, from what I hear. Doesn't it all smell a bit shady? Female knights whispered in the shadows, covering their mouths as they laughed. Could there be some kind of relationship with the prince? Perhaps he couldn't publicly take her as his mistress because of his reputation, so he used the knight's oath as a cover. It was strange from the start. Why would she even go to a suspicious duel organized by that bastard? In his private chambers, Adrian was tearing his hair out. I'm going insane. What kind of villain am I? Am I just the worst scum on earth? Cass, standing quietly nearby, spoke up. Your Highness, about what you said that day. Confused, he asked. When? Cass continued. A few days ago, on the day of the final match. He recalled the words he had said. Oh, that does it bother you? That does. Is it true if a royal decree came right now and told you to go elsewhere, wouldn't you leave? If you wish, you can always make an oath later. Cass hesitated, sweat beading on his forehead. If I said I would make the oath, would you accept it? Adrian answered immediately, his face cold. No. Cass was stunned. Adrian turned away, looking out the window. I don't want you. There's no joy in training you. Really, Your Highness? Cass asked. He thought to himself, I'm not joking. I'm dead serious. A moment later, he read the letter that had just arrived. The first prince of the royal house of Leonberg, Adrian Leonberg, is hereby released from his confinement and ordered to attend the upcoming banquet, hosted by the royal family. Adrian stared at it, dumbfounded. Did I do something? To think they'd lift my confinement a month and a half early after acting like they were going to lock me in the first prince's palace and never see me again. I don't know what that man is thinking anymore. As he walked down the hall with Cass asked, "Your Highness, are you not pleased that your confinement has ended?" Adrian replied nonchalantly. "I don't particularly care. Even if I leave the palace, I have nowhere to go, and no one to meet since I don't know anyone." A maid approached and stopped him. "Your Highness, I just saw an invitation that arrived for you." Adrian blinked. "An invitation?" He took the letter. It bore a silver crest. "Yes, this is it." He opened it and read, "A social club for special young noblemen." The maid nodded awkwardly. "It is a social gathering where you were once a member, Your Highness." Adrian pointed to himself, shocked. "Me?" He looked at the maid's uncomfortable face. "Is it a strange place?" The maid averted her gaze. "Yes, for a woman like myself, the refined tastes of the young masters are truly incomprehensible." He shuddered as the truth dawned on him. "So it's a gathering for drinking and womanizing." He crumpled the paper. "Forget it, I'm busy enough with my training. Why would I go to such a useless gathering?" But then his eyes caught the signature at the bottom. "To the wise, brave, and profound Prince Adrian from your eternal friend Bernardo of the House of Leon." But Adrian paused. He brought the paper closer, his eyes narrowing. "Bernardo, that's a name I remember. According to my uncle, they were the family that persisted with psychic magic until the very end, and ultimately fell into ruin 100 years ago." He spoke aloud. "I suppose I should attend after all." The maid bowed. "Understood. I will prepare your things." As Adrian looked down at the letter, clenching it in his hand, his inner monologue revealed his true motivation. "I hope that family hasn't completely lost its pride." Time passes and the scene opens in a warm, sunlit dressing room. A tailor, his eyes gleaming with professional pride, clasped his hands respectfully as he admired his creation. "Your Highness, is the outfit to your liking? I didn't miss a single one of your instructions, predominantly black minimal patterns and an extremely simple design." Standing before the mirror was a completely transformed figure. The obesity that had once defined the prince had vanished, revealing a handsome, sharp young man with golden hair and piercing blue eyes. The tailor showered him with praise. "And yet your authoritative presence is as magnificent as ever, Your Highness." Adrian examined his reflection. "I really have lost a lot of weight." The tailor nodded vigorously. "Your measurements have already decreased by more than half. I will also handle the attire for the palace banquet." "I will begin at once." But Adrian raised a hand to stop him, a confident smile on his lips. "No, wait a little longer. My measurements will have changed again by then." A few days after the confinement order was lifted, the scene shifts to the bustling streets of the capital. I'm on my way to that damned exclusive social club for young masters. Inside the carriage, Adrian leaned back against the plush red velvet seat and let out a long yawn. Being a prince is truly an exhausting position. The clothes, the carriage, the guards, everything is uncomfortably restrictive. He looked at the maid across from him and asked, "You, what's with that scar?" The maid flinched, stammering in fear. "It is due to my incompetence, Your Highness. It is for something you were right to reprimand me for." A violent flashback cuts through the present. The obese, tyrannical version of Adrian from the past is roaring. Again, distorted images of the fat prince appear screaming meaningless insults. "This sword is mine now." "You country bumpkin. You're quite pretty, aren't you?" The deeper I dig into this body's past, the more horror stories like this I find. Come to think of it, I've seen this maid for months, yet I don't even know her name. He decided to rectify this immediately. "What is your name?" She jumped, startled. Her eyes widened in fear. "I am Adelia Bayan, Your Highness." Adrian froze. The name struck him like a bolt of lightning. Bayan. His expression turned serious. He touched his chin, thinking. That's a family whose name has all but vanished from the list of nobility. I never expected to hear that name in a place like this. In the distant past, when not even cities existed, let alone kingdoms among the various races of the continent, it was an era when weak humans were naturally plundered and slaughtered. There were those who put an end to that miserable history. At the end of the Great War, to the saviors who finally allowed humanity to rise as the dominant race of the continent, the world bestowed upon them the title of the Five Ultimates. The words of one of those five heroes, Ruhan. She spoke sword in hand. Have you ever thought about it? The scene widens to a bloody battlefield. A colossal army of giants and monsters charges toward her. She stands there, unfaltering hand on the hilt of her sheathed sword. What you and I will do after this war is over. The one who beheaded Ida, the king of giants, and ended the long era of exploitation was the iron-blooded sword Marcus.
Bayan. She looked out at the remaining horde of monsters. Her eyes blazed with a fearsome golden light. You worthless pieces of shit. Crawling in here like maggots thinking you'll find something to eat. You bastards only think of filthy things with those shit-pile bodies of yours. You're only good for being a laughingstock. Her fury was endless. The holy sword in her hand trembled violently at her vulgar words. Back in the quiet carriage, Adrian covered his ears with a grimace. Just thinking about it dirties my ears. Anyway, a descendant of that Bayan, what on earth happened to make them end up like this? The carriage came to a stop. Your Highness, we have arrived. Prince Adrian stepped out, his boots touching the pavement. Perfect timing. He pointed at the maid inside. Adelia, we'll talk later. Adelia clutched her hands to her chest, bewildered. Outside, standing in the garden of a large building, was a man with long gray hair and a loosened tie, smiling brightly. Your Highness, have you been well all this time? Welcome, Prince Adrian Leon Beck. I am Lee of the Lee family. I cannot express how happy I am. Hanni, to see you safe and sound. Adrian observed him critically. This guy is a descendant of the Lee family. He looks like nothing more than a pampered fop. Lee leaned in close, feigning concern. You must have suffered so much to have lost so much weight. Adrian smirked. Huh. Lee blinked. Your Highness, is something the matter? Are you still feeling unwell? Adrian walked past him. No, nothing. I was just thinking that coming here was the right decision. Thanks to you, today is going to be very interesting. Lee watched him go, completely bewildered. Inside the social club, the air was thick with debauchery. The warm golden light of chandeliers illuminated a scene of excessive luxury. Ha ha! And then the girl lifted her skirt wide open as if she'd never known shame. A woman giggled uncomfortably. Oh, stop teasing me, I hate that. Lee observed Adrian, who sat silently, gently swirling the drink in his glass, his expression detached from the surrounding chaos. Lee thought to himself how strange. Normally, this bastard would be dead drunk and hitting on everyone by now. His aura feels completely different from before. A nobleman with slicked-back brown hair and a flushed face flopped down on the sofa next to Adrian. He grinned lewdly. I heard, Your Highness, that you plucked the flower of the Iron Lion. The rumors were everywhere. She looked beautiful enough in her armor, but I wonder just how magnificent the flesh underneath must be. A single word cut through the noise like a blade. You. Do you have any siblings at home? The nobleman blinked, confused by the irrelevant question. Have you forgotten, Your Highness? I have a younger brother. Adrian smiled. It was a cold, terrifying smile. Then that's a relief. Whoosh! A single warning. Adrian's fist became a blur of motion. The protagonist's fist slammed straight into the nobleman's face. The impact was brutal. Blood sprayed into the air as the nobleman's head snapped violently backward. Crash. The nobleman was sent flying. Glass shattered everywhere. The women screamed in terror. The music stopped. Lee stared in utter shock, sweat pouring down his face as Adrian adjusted his cufflink. He looked down at the bloody mess on the floor, his eyes glowing with a menacing blue light. It's a relief that your family line won't be completely wiped out. He slammed his booted heel down on the man's groin. The nobleman shrieked. Adrian looked down, his face hidden in shadow, radiating an aura of pure, unadulterated authority. He calmly delivered his judgment to the pathetic creature. From now on, your younger brother will be the heir. Adrian grabbed the battered nobleman by the collar and hauled him up. His face was now a chaotic mess of blood and bruises. He stammered in confusion. Why are you doing this, Your Highness? He stared at him with cold, soulless eyes without a hint of mercy. Listen carefully. I can tolerate you thinking of me as a scumbag, but I cannot tolerate you treating me as if I actually am one. The nobleman and his companions stood frozen. Question marks seemed to hover over their heads as they tried to process the prince's logic. What the hell is he talking about? Adrian provided the answer with another brutal swing of his fist. It means you need to be beaten even more. The blow landed with a sickening crack. The nobleman collapsed, but Adrian had already turned his attention elsewhere. Adrian called out sharply. Lee, the man who had been watching in shock, immediately dropped to his knees. Thud! Yes, Your Highness. He looked down at him with a twisted, blood-splattered smile. Didn't I tell you before? It seems today is going to be very interesting. The nobleman thought to himself as he looked at his face. Why is this crazy bastard suddenly acting like this? Adrian gave a command that made the blood of everyone in the room run cold. Summon the royal knights, immediately. Lee's eyes widened in shock, but the order was absolute. He scrambled to his feet, shouting, "As you command," before running out of the room. The nobles huddled together in the center of the room.
Adrian wiped the blood from his cheek and looked at the trembling crowd with contempt. "You women get out," he ordered dismissively. Another nobleman saw his chance and tried to blend in with the departing women. He tiptoed away, sweat beading on his forehead, hoping to escape the prince's wrath. But Adrian's voice cut through the air like a whip. "I believe I said women." The nobleman froze, flinching violently as he turned his cold blue gaze on him. "If you want to leave, then go. But if you do, you will leave this place as a woman." The threat was implicit and horrifying. "Not one of you performed the ritual bow before a prince, nor did you show a single shred of respect. You mocked me to my face and insulted my knight. In this case, what crimes can be applied?" From the shadows, the protagonist's knights appeared. For daring to disrespect royalty, it constitutes the crime of lèse-majesté. Furthermore, for challenging royal authority, it is equivalent to treason. "Please give the order, Your Highness. Which one of them should we force to their knees?" Adrian stood there, surrounded by his knights, his expression sharp and unforgiving. A cold smile played on his lips. "All of them." The consequences were swift and severe. In the royal palace, the king sat on his throne, his face twisted in fury. 14 children of noble houses have been arrested. Insulting royalty, treason. You've slapped them with every major charge. "And you could find? Do you have any idea what you've done?" After speaking, he thought to himself, "Because he did it in the name of royal authority, they must be punished severely. But with 14 families involved, we can't simply ignore the backlash." And Adrian finally spoke, a confident smile cutting through the tension. "Are you worried about backlash? They're nothing but outcasts within their own families. They are irredeemable trash who only tarnish their family's reputation by being kept around. Send a letter." The king looked up confused. "A letter to whom?" he said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "You keep asking when you already know the answer. Aren't there people who can handle the internal squabbles of each family better than anyone else? The siblings of those arrested bastards. Am I wrong?" The king leaned back on his throne. "Leave." Adrian bowed cheerfully. "Yes, father." Then he thought to himself, "See, there's nothing left to say, is there?" Then the atmosphere shifted from the magnificent palace to a quiet, sun-drenched room. Adrian smiled gently, his demeanor completely different from the tyrant at the club. "Now you don't need to be so worried. I won't hurt you." The maid trembled before him, tears welling up in her eyes. "Your Highness." "What exactly has this lowly girl done wrong?" Adrian watched her, observing her fear. That bastard must have tormented her quite a bit. She was from a family whose name had all but vanished from the list of nobility. Even the direct descendants knew nothing of the name Bayan. A glorious history had been erased and their unparalleled techniques had been lost. Great prestige, noble pride. All had vanished without a trace. And yet, a status window appeared beside her. Traits: berserker butcher, fragile heart, psychological caregiver, slave. Adrian was startled, sweat pouring down his forehead. "Wait, hold on. What are these traits?" Butcher becomes frenzied at the sight of blood. Berserker, a madwoman obsessed with battle. Fragile heart, possesses a gentle soul. Caregiver, skilled in looking after others. Adrian clutched his head. She possesses unparalleled talent, yet she has no trait to control her madness. He stared at the terrified girl. "Am I really going to be okay? Unleashing this madness upon the world, I have to give it a try." He looked at the status window again. Swordsmanship, aptitude S. After all, it's an S-rank talent. His eyes locked onto one specific trait. Psychological slave. A trait where the person feels immense pleasure from having a master to serve with all their heart. Perfect. There's a trait I can exploit. So Adrian stepped forward, his voice full of authority. "Adelia Bayan, swear your loyalty to me." Adelia blinked, completely bewildered. "Huh, what do you mean?" Adrian looked down at her. "I'm telling you to become my knight. Swear your oath right here, right now." Adelia recoiled in fear. "Your Highness." "That is not something a lowly girl like me could ever handle." But Adrian interrupted her. "You said your family has fallen. I will take responsibility for your family. In return, you must swear loyalty to me and serve me as your master." Adelia looked up, her eyes wide with shock and hope, silently repeating the words in her head. "If you cannot control your own madness, I will hold the reins for you." She spoke. "Will you truly take responsibility for my family?" Adrian stood there, his silhouette framed by the large window. "Yes, if you wish, I will summon them to the capital so you can see them whenever you please." Adelia's expression changed. The fear vanished, replaced by a bright, desperate hope. I will do as you wish."
I, Adelia, eldest daughter of the Bayan family. I pledge my loyalty to your highness, Adrian Leonberg. I will serve you as my master and dedicate my entire life to you. He reached out and placed his hand on her head. Good. From now on, you will obey my commands unconditionally. Adelia blushed slightly, her blue eyes shining with new purpose as she accepted his touch. I obey. Sweat beaded on his cheek as he looked at the girl who had just sworn to give her life for him. A flicker of doubt crossed his face. Was this really the right choice? Whispers echoed through the dark hallways like a poison. I hear the first prince who's been quiet lately has started acting like a bastard again. The rumors spread like wildfire, twisting the truth into monstrous shapes. He didn't just force a knight to swear an oath of loyalty through despicable means, but he also kidnapped the children of nobles, beat them, and even threw them in prison. Now they say he's taking a maid who's never even held a sword and making her his personal knight. He's obviously trying to build a harem under the guise of personal knights. Inside the sunlit palace, the air was stifling. Adrian sat on a velvet chair, resting his chin on his hand, his eyes sharp with irritation. Since when did everyone become so interested in me? I just took on one personal knight, yet ever since I woke up, everyone has something to say. Images of his critics flashed through his mind. The king, wearing a heavy golden crown, appeared before him with a look of disappointment. I'm having a headache trying to clean up the mess you've made, and yet you're here indulging yourself with women. Then came the scarred face of Count Bovon. How pathetic. Have you given up on the bet completely? Finally, the smug face of the third Prince Julian smirking mockingly. You appointed a maid as a knight, brother. That really is just like you. Adrian clenched his fists, his face etched with tension. Oh, for heaven's sake! Why do rumors spread so fast? Suddenly, the door burst open without waiting for a reply. A maid rushed in, announcing loudly, Your Highness, the Queen has arrived. Adrian threw his hands up in exasperation, stumbling in his chair. Oh, come on! The Empress entered, her elegant purple gown sweeping the floor. She looked down at her son, her gaze a mixture of stern judgment and a strange sense of relief. Just when I thought you had turned over a new leaf, it seems you intend to return to your old ways. Actually, this is for the best. Once you've chosen a life partner and settled down, you'll surely stop this wandering. Trust me on this. I will find a suitable partner for you. She turned and walked out as quickly as she had come, leaving Adrian alone in the silence of the room. Slumped over in a chair, he stared into the void. I don't even know anymore. Later, the room was bathed in a soft light. Adelia sat nervously on a chair. She looked up at Adrian, her bright blue eyes filled with hope. So, does this mean I'll have Mana now too? Adrian stood towering over her, his expression gentle yet serious. That's right, a very special kind of mana. Blue energy began to crackle around Adrian's hand. As he raised it, though the world has completely forgotten the iron-blooded sword, Saint, I haven't forgotten a single thing. Golden flames formed the silhouette of armored boots, walking through the void, the footsteps she left behind, the sword that danced at her fingertips, and the magnificent beat of her very heart. A burst of golden light exploded from Adelia's chest. She felt a warmth she had never known. A notification window popped open. Adelia Bayan has sensed mana. You have successfully transferred mana to Adelia Bayan. The mana has successfully taken form inside the body. A mana core has been created. She looked down at her own trembling hands as golden energy radiated from her body. This is mana. Adrian stepped back. What you just performed is the training method for the mana core. From now on, train by yourself whenever you have the time. Suddenly, Adrian's vision blurred. He staggered forward, collapsing onto the sofa, completely drained of energy. Adelia cried out, Your Highness, are you all right? Adrian gripped the sofa cushion, his body trembling. He thought bitterly, to think I'd be in this state just from creating a single tiny mana core. Then he spoke aloud, I'm just a little tired. Adelia looked at him, her face filled with worry and guilt. Why? Why would you go this far? For someone as lowly as me? Adrian turned his head away. It's nothing. You're dismissed for now. Adelia hesitated. She bowed her head deeply. I swear to serve you with loyalty for the rest of my life. A smirk returned to his face. Just don't forget that I am your master. Adelia looked up, her face radiant with a shocking, intense joy. Yes, yes. She clasped her hands together, truly radiating devotion. As Adrian turned his back to her, his smile faded into a look of sincere concern as he walked away. A dark thought crossed his mind. I'm just afraid you're the one who will forget that. Truly. A few days later, a knight looked at him and spoke. Your Highness, regarding Bernardoli, I hear he's being held by the Royal Guard as a witness to the recent disturbance. It seems no one is allowed to see him until the trial begins. Adrian blinked in surprise. A trial? Don't tell me I have to attend this trial, too. The knight shook his head. The royal family does not have to stand for trial. Adrian brightened, pointing a finger upward. That's good news. But a trial? They're really blowing this out of proportion. Adrian turned to the maid. Adelia, how are things on your end? Adelia flinched. What do you mean, Your Highness? Adrian leaned forward, his gaze piercing. Your mana core. Has it stabilized? Adelia nodded quickly. It has stabilized, Your Highness. Adrian stood up abruptly, shedding his relaxed demeanor. Good. Starting today, you will train with me. Go change your clothes and meet me at the training grounds, and put down that cleaning rag. You're a knight now. The scene changed to a vast stone training ground under a clear blue sky. Adrian was in a simple white shirt and dark pants when a harsh voice interrupted. What the hell do you think you're doing? Adrian looked towards his uncle. Can't you see? I'm warming up. Count Bouvon frowned, his face darkening. Not you. I mean that girl. Adrian glanced at her indifferently. Haven't you heard the rumors? I'm making her into a knight. The Count's patience ran out, his face twisting with rage as he shouted, Is the title of knight so worthless to you? With the way things are now, how can you be so reckless? Adrian clenched his fists, shouting back with equal intensity. Since when did you become such a busybody? If you hate it so much, why did you even come here? Just then, Adelia's legs gave out. Your Highness, 10 laps completed. Seeing the two of them glaring at each other, she spoke up. Your Highness. I apologize, it was my fault. Adrian cuts her off. Forget it, take this. Today, I will teach you the most basic stance. He grips his wooden sword, settling into a perfect form. A faint humming green energy shimmers around him. First, get into position and swing like this. The air is torn by a sharp sound. He turns to Adelia. Now you try. Adelia stands up nervously, sword in hand. She mimics his stance, her limbs trembling slightly. Like this. Suddenly her eyes change. Her pupils glow an eerie lime green. Her hesitation vanishes. She swings the sword. It's not the swing of a beginner. The blade slices through the air with terrifying speed and precision, creating a shockwave of wind. Count Bevenhat's eyes widen in genuine astonishment. As Adrian stands frozen, a drop of cold sweat rolls down his cheek. He thinks in stunned silence. She copied it that perfectly. Just from seeing it once, Adelia looks at him, her eyes returning to their normal, innocent, and uncertain state. Was my form correct, Your Highness? Adrian stares at her, a sliver of fear creeping into his heart. Wait a minute. If I let my guard down, she'll surpass me in an instant. He recalls the system's description of her psychological trait. Slave means submission to the strong, not respect for the weak. I already felt uneasy about how that bastard prince tormented her in the past. If she surpasses me now? Count Bevenhat steps forward, stroking his chin. His gaze is fixed on Adelia with newfound respect. I never expected her to possess this level of talent. The Count steps between them, his expression grave. Adrian asks, Uncle, what are you doing? Don't pay any attention to her. The Count ignores him. You're just a novice who's only held a sword for a few months. You can't control her, the Count declares, his voice low and dangerous. If you can't control her, then no one can. It's because you... The image shifts to a scene of blood and carnage. That sword has drunk the blood of the giant king, the mad dragon, and countless other creatures. Gruhan, the soul, manifests at the user's will. Adrian looks up, his eyes no longer human. They glow with a malevolent crimson light. She is mine. Do not look at her, and do not covet her. I thought I'd hate it if someone took what's mine. But as soon as the words leave his mouth, a sudden change occurs within him. His sense of reality is fading. He can't feel any vitality or life, only an overwhelming sense of cold and darkness. Is this an omen? At this rate, this weak body will be swallowed by Rohan's soul. That's enough. A brilliant blue light shatters the nightmare. The crimson hands crumble and vanish into nothingness. Adrian snaps back to reality, standing in the middle of the training yard, his breathing slightly ragged. He looks down at his hands, the lingering feeling of the abyss fading. The Count speaks in a persuasive tone. A single ordinary knight can save the lives of 10 soldiers. A single outstanding knight can save 100. That child could save 1,000. Or even more soldiers than that. But Adrian thinks to himself, is that faith? For the great cause of the Northern Frontier Commander. However, he replies nonchalantly, I don't care. The Count is stunned. Even if she could save countless people, a new voice breaks the stalemate. Adelia steps forward. Count Bevanhat, my body and heart already belong to His Highness. The Count stares at her speechless. Adelia continues, her hazel eyes shining with absolute loyalty. I cannot follow your words, my Lord Count. Adrian watches the scene with a satisfied expression. It was worth the effort of pulling my soul back. The slave mentality must submit to a higher-ranking entity. Adrian smirks, crossing his arms. Uncle, it's just as she says. And Uncle, you don't have anything left to teach me, do you? The goal from the start was just to help me lose weight after all. If you want to keep visiting my palace from now on, don't interfere in my affairs anymore. The Count looks at him for a long moment, his face unreadable, before closing his eyes in acceptance. I understand. Even after that day, my uncle continued to visit the palace every single day to keep an eye on Adelia, although he couldn't do anything since nagging and interfering were forbidden. Adrian stood to one side, watching and chuckling to himself. It's so amusing to see my arrogant uncle so restless. Suddenly, something catches the Count's eye. Adelia is standing amidst swirling golden embers. Her wooden sword is glowing with an intense, radiant aura. Adrian realizes the situation a step too late. Wait, she's already learned sword resonance. Adrian applauds loudly. Good, well done. He breaks out in a nervous sweat, thinking to himself, this fast, I might actually get surpassed. Adelia turns to him, beaming with an innocent, adoring smile. The Count's voice is low and dangerous as he looms over Adrian. Did you teach her mind magic as well? Adrian looks away, feigning indifference. Yes. Is there a problem? The Count's patience shatters. Isn't it enough that you alone learned that cheap trick? He roars, his aura flaring. Adrian's expression instantly turns cold. The smirk vanishes, replaced by a steely gaze. Get out. The Count freezes, stunned by the dismissal. There was a much better path, a potential you couldn't even imagine, and you've ruined it all. He ignores him and adds, escort him out. The guards hesitate between the two of them. Your Highness. The Count turns sharply, his cloak whipping around him. He storms out, his heavy boots thudding against the stone floor. Forget it. I'll leave on my own 2 feet. As the Count disappeared into the sunset, Adelia spoke up. Your Highness, was everything I learned just a trick? Adrian answered firmly without a moment's hesitation. No, absolutely not. Then why did the Count say such a thing? She asked, her voice trembling. Adrian gazed toward the setting sun, his expression thoughtful. Because he doesn't know. The people of this era have completely forgotten what true mind magic is. If they hadn't forgotten, they wouldn't have cast it aside like a worn-out shoe. He'll realize it soon enough. The next day. A sudden surge of energy blocked the blue lightning bolt. 6 streaks shot up from the ground near the Count's feet, who thrust his wooden sword down as if in challenge. Adrian responded at once. Sir, are you acting as if you're never coming back? The Count stared at him. Then prove it. I will use only a single circle. If you can push me back even half a step, I will acknowledge you. Adrian tightened his grip on the wooden sword. What was that bet again? He swung his sword to the side. Granting 1 wish, huh? The Count drew his own wooden training sword. Thin tendrils of lightning danced along its blade. If you win, I will grant you 1 wish no matter what it is. If you ask me to pass down my family's secret technique, I will do so. Adrian smirked. Blue flames erupted around him. That's not what I want. Fine. Now then, let's fight. The Count easily dodged, aiming straight for the neck right from the start. A venomous sword style, as always. He swung again, but it was the same. The Count tilted his body slightly to evade. Seeing this, Adrian sped up, unleashing a flurry of attacks. He panted, sweat streaming down his face. The Count parried with his sword, taunting him. Is this all you've got? He knocked him back. Giving up already. Adrian gritted his teeth, straining against the Count's overwhelming power. Don't break. Despite the struggle, Adrian's mind remained clear, analyzing the situation with cold precision. He's insufferable. But I have to admit it, he's strong. He's waiting for me to run low on mana so he can hand me a defeat. An even more humiliating one, with mind magic at just this level. I'll definitely lose just as he plans. A smirk crept across his face. But isn't it strange? 400 years ago, countless mind magic knights achieved unbelievable feats. And yet just because one somewhat useful technique appeared, all the skills of those great knights are now treated like trash. It seems everyone thinks that this technique called mana chains is a far more powerful method of mana control than mind magic. The Count stood opposite him, the wind howling across the training grounds. "What exactly are you trying to say?" Adrian raised his sword, holding it vertically before him. "My thinking is different. Just because it's mind magic doesn't mean it's all the same." "Sir, have you ever heard of the martial soul ballad?" The Count frowned. "This is a duel, not a place to discuss such fanciful-sounding things." Adrian scoffed. "I knew you'd say that. After all, you also call mind magic a crude technique that only low-class mercenaries would learn." The Count interrupted. "You talk too much. Do you need more time to catch your breath?" Adrian looked up, his eyes blazing with blue fire. "No." He took a step forward. Blue flames shot from his boots, scorching the ground. "The path a knight has walked becomes an achievement. 100 victories are my pride. An achievement carved into my heart and my strength." The Count watched and blurted out, "What?" "System opening. The engraved achievement becomes a martial soul ballad. A martial soul ballad has been created. It resides within the knight's sword. A small, ordinary achievement that I've worked on for the past half-year. This is the true power of mind magic. Martial soul ballad." Notification windows appeared one after another. Common grade martial soul ballad Ballad of the Spar has been created. Effect of Ballad of the Spar has been activated. A brilliant and mystical blue aura exploded forth. It enveloped Adrian's body like a second skin of soul fire. He stood amidst the swirling blue light, his back to the fortified castle walls. Despite that majestic display, the Count's voice cut through cold and unwavering with skepticism. "No matter what you do, the result will be the same. As long as you possess mind magic, you will never defeat mana chains." Whoosh! Adrian spun, his eyes glowing blue from his aura, and thrust his wooden sword forward. The wooden sword clashed with the Count's blade, which was coated in a thin, dense energy. Indeed, the mana from the chains had the property of repelling other mana, especially from mind magic. Adrian gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead as he struggled to hold his stance. The blue flames around him flickered violently under the pressure of the Count's thin aura. The Count smiled, a self-satisfied grin on his lips. "You're quite good at being stubbornly resilient." The Count attacked again, faster this time. Adrian parried, but the force of the blow sent shockwaves running up his arm. As they fought, Adrian's internal monologue continued. "Reveal the harsh price you paid to obtain this power, to achieve this verse. I've sparred over 100 times and withstood mana from the rings over 1,000 times with strength forged to deal with the Knights of the Ring while clashing hundreds of times. I've endured thousands of surges." Suddenly, the blue aura around Adrian converges into a massive, sharp pillar of light extending from his sword. This is the power of the soul verse. The sparring verse. Adrian holds the wooden sword, now covered in a blade of thick blue mana. The Count stares at the glowing weapon. His expression shifts from a sneer to a bit of curiosity. Now this might be worth a try. He lunges forward, disappearing in a blur of speed. Their swords clash again, creating a shockwave that blows away the dust. Adrian lets out a sharp breath, coldly parrying each of the Count's blows. The Count thinks to himself, sweat finally appearing on his brow as he parries a particularly heavy blow. "I can't believe the brat has lasted this long." Wham! He knocks Adrian back again to create distance. Adrian slides across the stone floor, his boots carving deep grooves into the rock. He regains his footing, panting heavily. The blue flame around him flickers, but never goes out. He asks, "How?" Adrian, breathing hard, looks at his uncle with defiant eyes. "Didn't I tell you, uncle? Not all mind magic is the same." The Count looks back, his own faint aura flaring menacingly around his shoulders. How arrogant. The Count takes a heavy step forward. The ground trembles beneath his feet. Whoosh! He swings his sword, releasing a wave of pressure that overwhelms anything he has shown before. Adrian barely manages to raise his sword to block. The wooden sword groans under the pressure. He is thrown against the wall. The Count looms over him, his silhouette terrifying against the blazing sky. "I'll stop playing around. Lasting this long is commendable. I'll give you that much." Adrian thinks, just as I expected, a common rank soul verse isn't enough. Adrian slowly begins to speak. 4 years ago, the Knights made a grave mistake. They left no enemies for their descendants. At first, certainly everything was passed down, intact sword techniques, training methods, the proper heart, and the shining soul verses, but time has gnawed away at those brilliant achievements, and eventually caused them to be forgotten. Stories of unseen dragons and unheard-of giant kings, they must have eventually become absurd legends. Of course, new soul verses would be created. However, at best, they were just victories over 10 knights. At best, they were achievements of overcoming 100 soldiers. At best, a verse built to fight against humanity. With ranks that could never become myth or legend, it couldn't withstand the new winds. Uncle, with such mediocre mana techniques? Sure, you can never reach a transcendent realm. The Count raises an eyebrow, slightly lowering his sword. Have you been drinking in the middle of the day? I can't understand a word you're saying. Suddenly, the atmosphere changes. The blue light surrounding Adrian shifts to a violent, sickly red. Just how much has Belvin H. lost? A terrifying demonic shadow erupts from Adrian's back. It is a figure of pure malice with blazing white eyes. If you don't know, Uncle, then I'll teach you. Adrian grips the wooden sword, but the shadow behind him swings an illusory blade of darkness. The kind that could tear open dragon scales and drink its hot blood. A system window appears. True dragon-slaying verse. Current abilities cannot withstand the rank of this verse. Adrian cries out in pain as the power tears through his unprepared body. A portion of the verse has been omitted. A portion of the verse has been omitted. A portion of the verse has been omitted. Warnings pour down the screen like rain. The massive skill tree is blacked out with only a single small branch lit up, singing only a single line of the verse, 1/4 of its power. Adrian stands in a crater of raw blood-red energy, his eyes wild. He forces the power into a single focal point. Break the dragon's scales! He swings his sword. A blade of black and red lightning tears through the air. The Count's sword begins to crack, his eyes widening in true horror. Seeing the attack coming, a slash carrying the weight of a dragon slayer, he thinks, at this rate I'll be devoured. The fragile lightning explodes as he pours everything he has into his defense. Boom! A massive explosion engulfs the training ground. Dust and rubble shoot into the sky. The shockwave shatters the stone slabs for meters around. Adrian is thrown back by the recoil. He tumbles across the ground, his body smoking, and comes to a stop. The dust settles to reveal the Count standing amidst the wreckage, but around him, the air crackles with the remnants of 4 distinct faint mana rings. Adrian lets out a weak laugh. Didn't you say you'd only use 1 ring, Uncle? The Count is speechless. He looks down at his sword. He's covered in the energy of his full power. And yet, after using all 4 of his rings, I failed to stop my sword from being broken. Adrian thinks to himself, they say mana from mind magic is inferior to that of the ring? An undeniable fact, huh? Adrian smiles, a blood-soaked smile. This is victory. Count Belvin H., you have lost. The darkness was thick and suffocating. A chaotic void filled with the roars of beasts and the heavy stench of blood, visions of sharp fangs and crimson energy. A swirl invading the mind. The memory of a sword-piercing dragon flesh replayed in an endless, horrifying loop. Stop. Please, just stop. Adrian's eyes fly open, his chest heaving as he wakes from the nightmare. Sweat soaks his hair and shirt, his pupils trembling as he clutches the bedsheets, trying to anchor himself back to reality. This damned soul verse. Remember the moment you forcibly drew out the power of an ancient legend? The moment you unleashed it, shattering the dragon scales. This is the price for that force. Drawing out the power of the martial soul poem. Because the true Dragon Slayer poem is a myth-grade soul poem, my body was torn to pieces by it. But it was worth the risk. The first martial soul poem I ever wove myself. 100 victories are my pride and strength. In 100 battles I have endured 1,000 waves. I will stand firm against even greater waves than that. A system window appeared in midair. The sparring poem has leveled up slightly. Adrian smiled, his confidence completely restored. This should be enough to take on those 3 bastard princes. Suddenly the door burst open and Adelia rushed in, her face flushed and tears streaming down her cheeks. Your Highness, you're finally awake. It was absolute chaos after you collapsed like that, Your Highness. I've never seen the Queen so furious before. Adrian sat on the edge of the bed looking more amused than concerned. Serves him right? Ha ha! Adelia continued to wipe her tears. Count Belvenhart left a message asking to be informed the moment you awoke, Your Highness. Adrian flopped back onto the bed. Don't report it yet. I'm going to rest for a bit. His internal monologue grew grim. If I don't carefully recover my mind from the damage of overusing the soul poem, I will pay a heavy price. Reality and past memories will merge into a chaotic mess, and at some point, the boundary of reality will collapse completely. I'll become a madman endlessly reenacting my soul's moments in an isolated world. To think I'd get trapped in the sword's memories again after finally becoming human. Just the thought of it makes me shudder.
Adelia Bayanishu was a great swordswoman.
Later that day, Adrian took a bite of food and spoke casually. Since you are a descendant of that same Bayan line, you should have the potential to inherit the martial soul poem she left behind. Adelia bowed her head, humbled and astonished. I never knew my ancestor was such a great swordswoman. And Adrian added, of course you'll need to grow much stronger than you are now to reach a level worthy of that poem. So on that topic,
what do you want to achieve by learning the sword?
Adelia flinched, her eyes widening.
Well, that is, if I could truly become a knight.
She clenched her fists, her face flushing with sudden resolve.
If I become a knight.
Adrian watched her. He chewed his food and waited for her declaration. If you haven't decided, you can tell me later. But Adelia stepped forward, her footing firm as golden flames began to flicker around her boots.
Your Highness's...
I will become your Highness's sword. Adrian stopped eating. He stared at her, stunned. Some soul poems begin with the sound of a battle horn. Some begin with the first step across a field. And some of their stories begin with a heartfelt vow. She closed her eyes, shouting her oath, "To live for you, your Highness. For my entire life I devote my all to you." A massive surge of golden energy erupted from her body. A system window appeared. Adelia Bayan has dedicated the poem of servitude. Adrian stared at the light. This is Adelia's soul poem, and sometimes a soul poem affects others as well. A new soul poem has been created. Common rank soul poem, poem of dominion, has been created. Adrian looked at the brilliant sphere of light in his hand, impressed. The poem of servitude. It's a poem dedicated to a master. It's less a soul poem and more a vow of servitude that binds two souls together, even considering her slavish mentality. To think a descendant of the iron-blooded swordmaster would weave a poem of servitude. He clenched his fist, feeling a new power flowing through him. I've just received some unexpected help. He smirked, a confident and calculating look in his eyes. As long as I'm the target of this poem of servitude, Adelia's growth will benefit me as well. He looked at Adelia, whose face was radiant with a pure smile.
Thank you.
Adelia was stunned, her face blushing bright red.
Your Highness...
She looked at him with wide, trembling eyes. The golden light faded, leaving the two of them in the quiet room. Adrian sat down, contemplating the future. Although I still don't know what direction that benefit it will take. A few days later. The royal palace stood imposing and majestic under a deep blue sky. Inside, Adrian sat in a chair, looking somber and staring into space. The Queen's voice rang out. Adrian, are you feeling any better? Adrian looked up to see his mother standing there.
It's fine,
he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. He thought to himself, it's easier to deal with people who hate this body, but someone who treasures its original owner this much is rather awkward to handle. The Queen looked at him with deep concern. Do you hold a grudge against your uncle? Your uncle truly didn't mean to harm you. So even if you have some ill feelings remaining, please let them go now, won't you? Adrian replied immediately, his face devoid of emotion. I don't hold any ill feelings at all. The Queen was shocked, a comical look of disbelief spreading across her face. How could you not? He treated me harshly and nagged me all the time, so to say I don't have any hard feelings would definitely be a lie. Adrian insisted, scratching his cheek, awkwardly flustered by her reaction. No, I really don't. His inner monologue revealed the cold truth. I dealt him a blow that day. Since all his pride and principles were negated, it must have been very difficult for him to endure what I planted in him that day. Mind-altering magic. If he has the capacity, he will leap forward, but if he cannot overcome it, he will lose even his precious martial abilities.
Honestly, I don't care what happens after that.
The Queen wiped her tears and smiled warmly. Your uncle has spent his whole life closer to a sword than to people, so he has a clumsy and crude side. However, he seems to be quite proud of you lately. He even went so far as to persuade His Majesty himself. Thanks to him, my house arrest was lifted earlier than planned. But trouble arose as soon as it was lifted. He recalled the scene at the club. Arrest the nobles. Arrest them all, he thought to himself. My uncle's position must have been difficult too. Is that why he acted so disapprovingly? But why did that man do it? For me. The scene unfolded in the prince's lavish study in the royal palace, an elderly man with a long white beard and scholar's robes. Niccolo Machiavelli stood with a thick stack of books in his hands, a patient but firm smile on his lips. Your Highness. Adrian faced him. He stood there with an expression of utter disgust, his eyebrows furrowed and a shadow covering his eyes as he gave a blunt refusal. "I absolutely refuse." Adrian thrashed around on the floor. His limbs flailed about in a childish tantrum completely unbecoming of royalty. "Ugh, seriously, why do I have to study?" Adrian shouted, his legs kicking wildly. The old scholar remained unmoved. He calmly recited a philosophical maxim. "If a person does not learn, how are they different from a beast?" Adrian shot up. His face contorted in feigned outrage as if he were offended to his very core. "Are you calling me an animal?" Niccolo chuckled, his eyes crinkling behind his glasses. "You have only just begun your studies." "Your Highness, so I cannot call you an animal just yet." Adrian retorted. "I haven't even started yet. Don't play word games with me." Despite my appearance, I already know everything I need to know. "I'm telling you there's no need to learn anything more." The old scholar's expression softened into a challenge, his gaze sharp and knowing. "If you insist, then let's do this. Discuss a few topics with me. If your skills are truly what you claim they are, I will no longer visit you, Your Highness." A sharp, confident smile spread across Adrian's face, his blue eyes flashing with sudden interest. "Sounds good." A short while later, Adrian slammed his hand on the table, leaning forward intensely. "That's exactly it. That's why you must always watch your back. It's human nature to trample on you, if you're too lenient." Niccolo stroked his beard, his eyes wide with surprise and genuine admiration. "You are absolutely correct." He pushed a particular book forward. "The Theory of the Iron-Blooded Monarch. You will find this book very interesting to read. Here, it evaluates the relationship between a ruler and their subjects as a type of contract or transaction. The ruler receives military and economic support in exchange for protecting the subjects, and the subjects seek protection and political stability from the ruler in exchange for their loyalty." Adrian flipped through the pages, nodding as he took in the information. He said, "That makes sense. All relationships should be reciprocal." He pointed to a passage completely absorbed in the discussion. "So what about this part?" "Exactly. And over here, too." The conversation flowed naturally, two minds, one young, one old, finding a rhythm of mutual intellectual respect. A moment later, Niccolo organized his books, preparing to leave. "Well then, Your Highness, let's continue the rest of our discussion tomorrow." Adrian, now standing and holding the book, waved goodbye with a bright smile. It was sincere and a complete departure from his initial tantrum. "Yeah, sure, I'll be waiting." As the door slammed shut, Adrian was left alone in the fading light, a large question mark seeming to hang over his head. He blinked, realizing what had just happened. "Wait a minute. Did I just end up having a normal lesson after all, huh? That old man is really cunning." Outside the heavy doors, Niccolo walked along the corridor, a contemplative look on his old face. "The first prince. He's quite different from the rumors." Days passed. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. In the prince's bedroom, the silence was heavy. Adrian lay on his bed, his head hanging off the edge. Looking at the room upside down, his eyes were as lifeless as a dead fish's. "Ugh, I'm so bored." He rolled over restlessly. "Have I been living too diligently lately? Since I'm not training, there's nothing to do, and my body is still recovering." The maid's voice cut through his lethargy. "Your Highness Sir Bevanhat has come to see you." Adrian sat up, surprised. It had been a while since he'd had a visitor. He looked at the maid, Adelia, who was standing anxiously by the door. "What should I do?" Adrian said cheerfully, swinging his legs off the bed. "Yeah, show him in." He thought to himself, it's been a few days since the last duel, so it's about time he paid a visit. The door opened, and Adrian stood up to greet his uncle with a confident posture. But the atmosphere immediately grew heavy. Count Bovenhates entered, his face dark and stern, his expression clearly showing deep guilt. "Uncle." Adrian froze. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he read the mood. It seems he still hasn't overcome the inner demon I planted in him at all. The Count stood silently for a moment, unable to look his nephew in the eye. Finally he spoke. His voice was low, heavy with regret. "I apologize. I broke the promise I made to myself and wounded you greatly. For that, I have absolutely no excuse." Adrian thought, the reason I have to rest isn't because of his sword aura. It's because I overused the true dragon-slaying verse. Adrian's conscience pricked him. Seeing his uncle's remorseful expression, he told himself that his uncle's position must have been incredibly difficult, having to deal with yet another incident caused by me. The Count looked up, his eyes sincere. "So tell me what you desire. If you want this arm, I will give it to you. If you want these eyes, I will give them." Adrian stumbled back, waving his hands frantically in a panic. What would I do with that junk? He looked away, a conflicted expression on his face. Geez. For someone who was supposed to be a master swordsman in the old days to get so hung up on his inner demons, he sighed, conceding. Fine. I'll be magnanimous. I'll tell you my wish then, Uncle. Let me go on a trip. The Count blinked, and the tense atmosphere vanished in an instant. A silence fell over the room. Since your confinement is over, can't you go out whenever you want? Adrian wagged his finger with a mischievous grin. Not just a day trip like that. Somewhere far away. Outside the capital, if possible. The Count stared at him. He considered the request. It'll take some time to arrange with the upcoming banquet. Going too far will be impossible. Adrian shrugged, smiling brightly. That's fine. The Count turned to leave. His demeanor had lightened somewhat. Very well, then. I'll be in touch when the schedule is finalized. He watched his uncle's retreating back. Okay. After the Count had left, Adrian noticed Cax staring at him and asked, What is it? What? Why are you looking at me like that? Cax smiled, scratching his cheek sheepishly. It's just... I'm a little surprised, that's all. I just thought you would make a much more unreasonable demand, Your Highness. Since the Count broke his promise, this was a rare opportunity to capitalize on it in many ways. Adrian looked down, his expression unreadable for a moment. It's just, seeing that stubborn old man act like that, it made me feel sorry for him. Cax's eyes widened in surprise, then he burst out laughing. Adrian snapped, noticing his retainer's amusement. What? Why are you laughing? You're getting a little too comfortable lately, Cax. Just then the maid gently interrupted, holding a white envelope. Your Highness, the letter you've been waiting for has arrived. The letter read, I have recently made a small achievement. It seems I will be able to visit you soon. I hope you remain in good health until that day. From Awen Kogan. Adrian smiled in satisfaction. Good news at just the right time. About 5 days later, the Count sent word, and 2 days after that, the day of departure arrived. Sunlight flooded the stone bridge as a caravan set off. Inside the carriage, Adrian leaned out the window, looking at his uncle, who was riding alongside on horseback. Uncle, so what's the name of the domain we're visiting? Count Bovenhates sighed, looking straight ahead. Can you really not sit still for a moment? I'll explain, so get back inside. The Count's domain. It's the largest weapons producer for the royal court. There are iron mines within the territory that supply high-quality iron and a guild of artisan blacksmiths to refine it. Adrian leaned back against the carriage seat, a thoughtful expression on his face. I originally planned to just grab a decent sword from the royal armory, but then the king's decree came down. Cax, know that you will be severely punished if you let that boy touch another blade. Cax could only reply, Please forgive me. Your Highness, it is a royal decree. We cannot issue any weapons to you. Adrian suddenly realized. Considering this guy's track record, that's only natural. But anyway, that means if I want a real weapon, I have to get it outside the royal palace. He's surprisingly thoughtful despite his appearance. The Count grumbled without looking over. It's distracting. Close the window. Adrian retorted childishly, What, no way? The caravan moved along the dirt road, flanked by rows of green trees. Leaves danced in the wind, and so the long and arduous 20-day journey had just begun. Stretching across the map like a lifeline connecting distant lands, this expedition includes a brief stop at a territory 3 days' journey from the capital. After that, we'll visit the Iron Lion Fortress another 2 days away, where the entire party will rest before returning to the capital. Inside the carriage, Adrian sat with his arms crossed, his face a mask of extreme boredom. As he stared straight ahead, he thought, And now I'm stuck in this carriage for 3 whole days without being able to move. The person sitting across from me isn't the least bit interesting either. Adelia only answers with yes or no. Adrian let out a long sigh, the sound like a deflating balloon. Since I have the time, I should check on my magic core. It's a side effect of using the true dragon slaying verse. My magic core is completely empty, but it's time to fill it up. The real world gradually faded away. The vibrations of the carriage, the cool breeze seeping through the window crack, and the voices of the knights outside, it all became background noise. Adrian focused, gathering the hidden fragments of mana between the layers of reality's structure. Blue energy flared around him, swirling like a nebular storm. If I just fill this empty magic core... Suddenly, the energy core vibrated violently. The magic core skyrocketed in size and intensity, bathing him in the deep blue of the cosmos. Adrian's consciousness stood within the space of his own mind, watching this phenomenon in astonishment. When did my magic core get this big A-system window appeared? You have attempted a feat beyond your capabilities and have caught a glimpse of a part of that colossal will. Adrian's eyes flew open, shock evident on his face. This is the effect of forcibly using the true dragon-slaying verse. That effort has been reflected in your body. Your magic core has been expanded. Due to the expansion of your magic core, your physique has changed significantly. Your body can now withstand more mana. You have reached the level of Night Adept. Your connection to the origin has been somewhat improved. Some restrictions on your restored powers have been lifted. The power Heavenly Eye has been significantly improved. The power Heavenly Ear has been significantly improved. Adrian exhaled, feeling the new power flowing through him. I've taken another step forward. The carriage finally came to a stop under the clear, radiant sky of the territory. A magnificent white mansion with classical architecture stood imposingly before them. Basking in the sunlight, he said, I do not know how to express what an honor it is to meet your highness like this. Two men stood at the entrance to welcome the prince. Aga of House Allen offers his greetings, one said. A man in gray continued, Torrens, the eldest son of House Allen, greets your highness. Adrian nodded in response. Thank you for your hospitality. Aga smiled warmly. The long journey must have exhausted you. I shall guide you to your room. They passed through grand hallways. Adrian glanced around. They said this is a weapons manufacturing hub, and indeed the whole mansion is filled with all sorts of armaments. However, they're all just low-grade items. Just flashy on the outside and useless in a real fight. It seems it'll be difficult to find what I'm looking for here. The group continued down the hallway, Adrian scanning the display cases with a critical eye. Did you not say the Blacksmith's Guild was located in this territory? Aga turned back, surprised. That is correct. But Adrian stopped, his eyes shining with determination. I wish to take a look around there. As they stepped outside, Aga added, The blacksmiths by their very nature are rough and stubborn people. When they get into the rhythm of their work, they often ignore visitors, even the lord of the land. And the words they utter are as cold and unrefined as the blocks of iron they handle. Therefore, even if they offend your highness, please see it as their artisan spirit, and be magnanimous enough to overlook it. Adrian listened, but his attention was drawn to something else. A fiery glow was radiating from nearby. The heat from the forge is so intense it distorts the very air. The heat from the forge is very strong. If you feel uncomfortable, your highness, please say so. Inside the forge, chaos reigned. Dozens of blacksmiths were pounding their hammers, sending sparks flying everywhere. They moved with a frantic energy, completely ignoring the royal entourage that had entered their domain. Adrian stood amidst the noise and heat, the firelight dancing in his eyes. Aga approached him worriedly. Your highness! But Adrian ignored him, stepping deeper into the forge. The flames crackled and popped. An old man with white hair and a beard, his muscles rippling with sweat, brought a giant hammer down onto the red-hot block of steel. Adrian watched him intently. Among all the sounds, there was one that was particularly clear. Clang. Adrian froze at that rhythm. This is it, Adrian whispered, staring at the red-hot blade on the anvil. This is it. The very first memory I have. Adrian stared, motionless, sweat pouring down his face, from both the heat and the intensity of that memory. A soft cloth gently touched his cheek. He blinked, snapping out of his daze. Adelia was unexpectedly wiping the sweat from his face, speaking softly as she looked at him with concern. Your Highness, you're sweating a great deal. Adrian let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He glanced back at the forge, his eyes landing on the unfinished work. The noise of the forge returned to the center stage, and the workers finally seemed to notice their guests. But the air was tense. A man in a green hat and a mustache stepped forward. These humble men send their greetings to your highness. Aga introduced him. This is Jackson. He's in charge of this blacksmith's guild. Adrian gave a curt nod. I see. Jackson saw the old man. The silver-haired man was still focused on his forging, and Jackson erupted in anger. What do you think you're doing? Stop at once and bow to his highness. Before he could finish his tirade, a hand clamped over his mouth. Jackson's eyes bulged in terror as he saw Adrian gripping his face, his own eyes glowing. A threatening golden light shone from them as he whispered coldly, You talk too much. Jackson trembled, falling silent immediately. Adrian released him and looked around the workshop. The other blacksmiths looked exhausted with gaunt faces and eyes full of fear and fatigue. It was clear they had been dragged here, against their will, doing a job I didn't even command. He turned to the workers, his voice full of authority. The iron will grow cold. Unless you plan on letting the furnace fire go out as well, then by all means just stand there. The blacksmiths shouted, What are you all doing? Grab your tools! Another chimed in, Get on the bellows. The forge roared back to life, but amidst the chaos, Adrian stood still, arms crossed, observing the flames. The old man, immersed in his craft, ignored all the noise. As Adrian drew closer to the anvil, his heart began to beat, in time with the heavy hammer blows. The roaring fire shot up, bathing him in brilliant orange light. "It's just," Adrian murmured, sweat dripping from his chin, his eyes wide and trembling with a mess of emotions. A jumble of awe and familiarity. What the hell is this feeling? The amber sunset washed over the splendid white structures of the domain, creating a warm yet melancholic scene as Adrian walked with Ega. For some reason, for the past 6 months, he's just been repeating the process of forging swords and then melting them down again. Adrian listened intently, his gaze fixed forward as he asked a pertinent question. Were they failures? Ega shook his head slowly as if unable to fathom the craftsman's standards. It's hard to say. Every sword he creates is considered a masterpiece, which is why he's called the Master Swordsmith. Even the swords he's made so far, and seem to me to be completely without flaw. It's a mystery why he melts them all down. Moreover, for the past month, he's barely slept, just clinging to his work. He's not young anymore either. Our concern is not without reason. Time passed and several days went by. Inside the sweltering heat of the forge, sparks flew like fireflies in the dark. The rhythmic sound of a hammer striking steel echoed throughout the vast room. The prince visited the forge from early morning until late at night, each day a silent sentinel witnessing the birth of a weapon. In contrast to the tension caused by rumors about the first prince's arrival, what was surprising was that no incidents occurred at all. The old man simply continued his work, and the prince simply stood and watched. And finally, the day of the prince's departure arrived. The moon hung high in the night sky as the last hammer blows rang out, followed by the quiet of the morning. Inside the forge, Adrian stood looking down at the anvil with a heavy heart. He sighed softly. I had hoped to see it finished. Before leaving, Ega looked at the prince, sensing the sincere disappointment in his voice. He truly regrets it. Adrian gave a quiet order, accepting the fixed schedule. Let's go. Ega nodded. I understand there is a farewell party tonight, and we must depart early tomorrow. Perhaps that is why. Ega also hoped the prince could see the sword completed by the master smith, even if only for a moment, just as Adrian placed his hand on the carriage door to leave. Your Highness. Adrian paused, looking back. Ega was running toward him, breathless and frantic. He shouted in excitement. It seems the master smith has finished the sword. Adrian's eyes widened. He turned back to look toward the balcony that overlooked the estate. There, bathed in the beautiful colors of the sunset, was the master smith. He was bare-chested, holding a long silver blade that caught the dying light, making it radiate a brilliant, surreal halo. The old man was breathing heavily, his chest heaving, but his hands were steady as he wiped the blade with a cloth. The sword was magnificent, emanating a pure, cold light, a testament to a lifetime of skill. The master smith knelt on one knee, bowing his head in reverence. He offered the sword with both hands, presenting his life's work to the young man, standing before him. I humbly present this sword to your highness. Adrian stepped forward, his eyes locked on the weapon. He reached out his fingers, touching the cold steel of the guard. Heat it like the sun, as it rises on the horizon, and cool it until its hue matches the king's red cloak. If you do so, a sword like the sun and a king shall be born. Adrian smiled and asked, Does it have a name? The old man replied, Let's call it Twilight, the setting sun. Adrian looked at this gleaming blade, then back at the old man. Is that the twilight of dawn, or the twilight of darkness? The master blacksmith chuckled softly. To me it is darkness, but for your highness, it must surely be the dawn. Adrian laughed, a clear and sincere sound. You speak with a surprising skill for a blacksmith. The old man's smile suddenly vanished. His eyes started to lose focus. Heh. Heh. That's... Suddenly his strength gave out. What a relief. The master blacksmith collapsed forward. Adrian moved in an instant. Catching the old man before he hit the ground, Adrian held his frail body. The man stammered, Your Highness! Adrian gave an order, his tone allowing no argument. Inform my uncle. I think I will be staying here tonight. As the night deepened, the moon cast a faint glow over the estate. Inside, the only light was the moonlight filtering through the window. Adrian sat on a wooden chair, next to the bed where the old man was lying. The master blacksmith lay in bed, his breathing labored. The moment your highness stood behind me that day, the sword took shape as if by fate. The sword itself decided the day it would be born. He replied, Is that what you think? The truth is... He leaned in close and said something that made the old man's eyes widen in realization. He stared at the young prince, seeing something far beyond mortal flesh. My God. Then, you are... Andrian calmly met his gaze. Yes, I see. Now I understand. How could I not have understood the heart of this old comrade? He closed his eyes for a moment, gathering his last bit of strength. Your Highness, please, let me have the sword for a moment. Andrian stood up and retrieved the sword. Here it is. He placed the hilt into the old man's trembling hands. The master blacksmith grasped it one last time, feeling the familiar coldness of his own creation. Please, may this sword... The old man looked at Andrian, his eyes full of hope and premonition. Become as great as you are. Andrian placed his hand on the smith's, his expression gentle but firm. It most certainly will. The master blacksmith smiled in satisfaction, letting go. His grip loosened his hand, falling away from the sword. Andrian watched as the chest that had once heaved with the rhythm of the forge now lay still. He was gone. Adrian sat alone in the silent room, the moonlight illuminating the serene face of the artisan who had given his all for his final masterpiece. The next morning, the sun shone brightly. Birds chirped in the trees outside the manor. Ega stood there with a radiant smile, presenting a long, lavishly decorated box to Andrian. Inside was a sword, adorned with gemstones and intricate gold engravings, of course. While one cannot simply discuss the value of a sword forged with a soul, I believe it would be inconvenient for your highness. And to use it, I happen to acquire this magic sword to offer to you, your highness. So please accept this one instead. Andrian held the master blacksmith's sword, simple, unadorned, yet incredibly deadly. He drew it slightly, inspecting the blade. It's very good. He thought to himself, even if it isn't high grade, it's a fine mid-grade sword. Ega added, Your Highness, about that sword. Andrian sheathed the sword with a satisfying click. He smiled at Ega. A sword forged with the very soul of a renowned master blacksmith, and is already a tremendous gift. And yet you even thought to offer an additional magic sword. Truly, the Allen family's loyalty to the crown is exceptional. Ega's eyes welled up with tears of despair. I was going to use the flashy magic sword as bait to get the master blacksmith's sword back, but now I've just handed over an excellent sword. For absolutely nothing. They departed in a hurry. A commander shouted, The carriages and infantry will follow at a slower pace. The cavalry will ride ahead at full speed. We're behind schedule, so we must make haste. Hold the formation. The knights roared, Yes, sir. Andrian stood next to a horse looking at the count. You seem busy, uncle. Come to think of it, I didn't see you at all while we were in this territory. The count sighed. His Majesty gave me a separate mission. Andrian rubbed his chin, thinking. I guess my little outing wasn't exactly free, was it? The Count continued. That's right, so you should get ready too. We plan to ride hard and reach the Iron Lion Fortress by tonight, so you'll be riding a horse. Andrian froze. About that. I don't know how to ride a horse. The Count looked down, bewildered. Andrian stared at the horse beads of sweat on his forehead as he delivered the punchline to his very existence. I was originally a sword. How would I know how to ride a horse? The journey to the Iron Lion Castle was a chaotic experience. It was a series of humiliations for a prince unaccustomed to being on horseback. Andrian threw up a rainbow from motion sickness, while Adelia watched in a panic. There were a few twists and turns along the way, but although it wasn't the half-day journey originally planned, we arrived after a full day. Before them stood a massive stone fortress, its towers reaching for the sky. So this is the Iron Lion Castle. The rhythmic sound of armored footsteps echoed on the stone ground. Rows of knights stood at attention. A brown-haired man stepped forward. Placing a hand on his chest in a formal salute, Joseph of the Gonrotenga family greets the first prince. Behind him, all the soldiers roared in unison. The Iron Lions salute the noble blood of Leonbeck. Adrian wore a confident smile despite the overwhelming presence surrounding him, thinking to himself, Your spirits are running a bit. Too high, don't you think? And the reason is obvious. Time to stir things up a bit. Arwen. Arwen stepped out from the ranks, her expression cool and composed. He called her name Arwen. Arwen Guyan bowed her head deeply. Her long black hair spilled over her shoulders as she spoke with reverence. Your Highness, I have counted the days waiting for the moment I could see you again. The reaction was immediate and volatile. Flames of jealousy and anger erupted from the male knights behind her. Their faces twisted in fury as they glared at the prince who had stolen their idol. Adrian observed their fury with a smug expression. Oh, such a quick reaction.
Suddenly, the temperature dropped. A terrifying purple aura erupted from the maid behind him. Her eyes blazed with a threatening golden light, her face a mask of pure rage. Adrian flinched, breaking into a sweat as he sensed the danger. Ah, there's hostility directed at me. He grabbed her shoulders tightly. Adelia! Adelia snapped out of her trance. Her eyes returned to their usual soft blue, though she still looked confused, blinking. Yes, Your Highness? Adrian sighed internally, both relieved and wary. Good thing I instilled that slave mentality in her early on. Adrian turned back to the crowd, a sharp, challenging smile on his face. He commanded his knight, and now Arwen, follow me. We have much to catch up on, don't we? He glanced back with a smirk, mocking their pride. It'd be even better if those guys behind her came along too. The scene shifts to the castle's training grounds. Adrian stood alone in the center holding a wooden training sword. Surrounded by the Iron Lion Knights, he looked around, his voice echoing, "Who will show me the sword of the Iron Lions? If my status makes you hesitate, I give you my word in the name of Leon Beck that no one will be held responsible for the outcome of this sparring match." Still no one moved. Adrian's smile twisted into a sneer. Still no one? He sighed, launching a heavy insult. The famous Iron Lion Knights are this cowardly. It seems the title of the kingdom's finest is just an empty name. That struck a nerve. A knight with wavy orange hair and arrogant eyes stepped forward, gripping his wooden sword. I am Danon of the Daily family. Though I am far too lacking to represent the sword of the Iron Lions, if your highness permits, I will dare to stand before you. Adrian took a relaxed stance, the wooden sword held loosely in his hand. He waved his other hand. No need for permission. I was the one who asked first. Danon charged forward, instantly the ground cracking beneath his feet. Then please be careful. He swung his sword, brilliant blue mana exploding from it with a swoosh. Adrian calmly observed the attack. His eyes narrowed. Blue sparks flew as the two swords clashed, but in that chaos, Denon blocked, but the prince's strength was too great, causing him to spit blood as he was knocked down. Denon was sent flying backward, tumbling across the grass. Adrian stood amidst the dust. He looked at the fallen knight with no interest. Next! The audience gasped. Another knight charged in. I am Paul Rotham Denon, is only a first year, but I'm a third year. Thwack! He was also sent flying with a single strike. More knights rushed toward him. I am Hallie, a fifth-year apprentice knight. Cough thwack. Hallie was launched into the air. Judith, eighth year. Another knight fell. The sword of the Iron Lions never loses. Soon the training ground was filled with groaning knights. Adrian stood in the middle of the battlefield looking completely unscathed. Observing the defeated, he sighed, looking at the knights still hesitating on the sidelines. Good grief. Now I want to fight a full-fledged knight. You all are too slow. He turned to Arwen. Arwen? She stepped forward dutifully. Yes, Your Highness. Adrian smiled at her. When I return, you will come with me. Arwen froze, her expression momentarily unreadable, before bowing her head in obedience. Your Highness. It seemed that statement angered the remaining knight into challenging him. A voice interrupted them. Your Highness. Adrian turned to see a tall knight with long silver-blonde hair and an arrogant expression approaching. He wore the heavy armor of a full-fledged knight. Adrian smirked. Too easy. The knight stopped. I hear Your Highness enjoys a wager. How about a little bet to liven things up? If I defeat Your Highness? Adrian cut him off immediately, refusing. Arwen is not a prize in a tournament. He looked at the arrogant knight. Why not bet something else? Bring the swords. Adrian grasped the hilt of his sword. He drew part of the blade, revealing a glowing blue gem embedded in the pommel. If you win, I will give you this sword right here and now. Arwen's eyes widened in shock. The arrogant knight narrowed his eyes as he recognized the weapon. Arwen grabbed Adrian's arm in a panic. Your Highness, I should be the one, he replied instantly. You are 100,000 times more precious than this sword. He thought to himself, because the value of a swordmaster cannot be compared to a mere sword. She looked at him pleadingly, but seeing his determination, she let go. The silver-haired knight smiled in satisfaction. I understand. Your Highness Dunham of the Fahrenheit family, I am a full-fledged knight of the Iron Lion Order and am on the verge of reaching 3 chains. Adrian looked at him with a bored expression. So that means you're still just at 2 chains, then? A vein popped on Dunham's forehead. He raised his weapon proudly. This sword is... The 17th blade created by the artisan known as the Swordmaster. If you win, this sword will belong to your highness." Adrian smiled with amusement. "Oh, what a coincidence. It's called Twilight. I also happen to have a sword I received from that very same Swordmaster. This is the Swordmaster's 100th creation." Dunham looked skeptical, beads of sweat forming on his brow. "I've never heard any rumors about the Swordmaster making a 100th blade." "I suppose not," Adrian replied calmly. "This was his final work, completed just a few days ago." Dunham's eyes narrowed and faint blue sparks began to crackle around his blade. "All right, very well. Although your highness walks a misguided path of swordsmanship, I can acknowledge the relentless effort behind it. To show a little respect for that, I will go all out in this sparring match." As Adrian stood, relaxed blue flames began to ignite around his chest. "A misguided path, you say?" He closed his eyes and shook his head. "How small-minded. This position was never mine alone to begin with. From the very beginning, the only respect I needed was from my own people." "Adelia, watch closely." Adelia gasped, "Yes." A massive explosion of blue mana erupted from Adrian. It swirled violently, forming the towering spiritual silhouette of a knight. Behind him, the aura was so overwhelming it overshadowed even the castle towers in the background. "This is the path you must walk from now on." Adelia stared intently, mesmerized by the display of true power. "Yes." Golden energy swirled around her as she envisioned herself following that blue light. "I will most certainly do so, Your Highness." Elsewhere in the sun-drenched drawing room, a count broke the silence with a thoughtful question. "So, how many times have we visited the Iron Lion Castle now?" Sitting opposite him in a lavish blue velvet armchair, Count Wallerden held his teacup. His expression was obscured by the steam as he answered curtly, "This is the 4th time. The 3rd and 5th princes have visited while the 1st prince is under house arrest. No matter how poor his reputation is, it's undeniable that the 1st prince is the kingdom's rightful heir. For things to have reached this point, you surely bear a great deal of the responsibility. If you, the commander of the 3rd Legion, had supported the 1st prince even a little, his highness would not have become so isolated. So why are you only now acting as his guardian?" The count lowered his gaze, thinking to himself, "I was not wrong. I certainly did cast aside my own nephew once. He wasn't just an incompetent monarch, but also a tyrant. That was my nephew. One day when I berated him for being intoxicated by some strange potion. Have you lost your mind? He charged at his own uncle with a sword, a hopeless bastard. When I returned to the north in utter disappointment, he brazenly sent me poisoned wine, calling it a gift, accompanied by a letter. But the count drank the poison anyway. Blue lightning crackled around his body as he purged the toxins. As I used my mana to burn away that cheap poison, I also burned away what little familial affection I had left along with it. However, that brat who I thought would never change has now become different. He endures grueling training and is growing stronger every day." Count Belvenhat looked at him, bewildered by this defense. "Wasn't it you who said the 1st prince must never become king?" he thought to himself. "The boy is a completely different person now than he was before." Then he looked Count Belvenhat straight in the eye and pleaded with a rare vulnerability. "Give him a chance, at least so he can stand on the same starting line as the other princes. I beg of you." Count Wallerden looked at him, completely bewildered by the sight of the proud commander bowing his head. "I really don't understand. I don't know if it's you or the 1st prince. Who has changed? First, raise your head. A man known as the Silver Lion." Suddenly, the double doors burst open, and a knight stood there in a panic. Spreading his arms, he announced, "My Lord Wallerden." Both counts turned to face the messenger. The 1st prince is outside under the castle courtyard's brilliant blue sky. Belvenhat and Joseph walked quickly along the stone path. Joseph tried to reassure him. "There's no need to worry so much. Dunham knows his limits, so nothing serious will happen. Even in a real duel, he certainly wouldn't beat the prince senseless." Belvenhat walked with a smirk, his hands behind his back. "The one you should be worried about right now isn't the prince, it's your knight." Joseph looked at his friend as if he had lost his mind. "You've really become strange." "You look pale, and now you're spouting nonsense." Suddenly loud clashing sounds echoed from the courtyard. He was stunned to see a figure fly through the air. The knight slammed into the ground, skidding through the dirt. "That's my knight." Joseph's jaw dropped. "Dunham." In the center of the training ground, surrounded by a crowd of roaring knights. "Whoa, His Highness won again. Even Dunham was defeated," the soldiers shouted in amazement. Joseph stared blankly at the scene before him. What is this? Belvenhot crossed his arms, looking completely satisfied. Didn't I tell you? Adrian wiped a trail of blood from his lip, his eyes burning with intense fire. He isn't the one you should be worried about, Adrian shouted, looking down at the remaining challengers. His body was cloaked in ethereal blue flames. Next, a few minutes earlier. You always said that a true knight starts at 2 circles, Adrian panted. Sweat dripped from his face as the blue flames flickered around his chest. Those words were no exaggeration. The current training stanza isn't enough, he realized, looking at his trembling hands. But I can't bring out the true dragon-slaying stanza just to deal with an ordinary knight. In that case, Adrian's eyes narrowed. The hyper-focus trait activated. The world fell silent. All sound vanished. The charging knight moved as if in slow-motion frames. He gripped the hilt of his sword. This body no longer felt like his own. His left eye burned with a piercing blue flame, a sensation he's had ever since that moment. The knight swung his sword down. At the same time, Adrian launched a counterattack. A torrent of blue energy exploded outward on impact. Adrian's blow was heavy and decisive. The knight was blown back by the sheer power of the mana. A wild smile spread across his face as steam rose from his body. "More!" he roared again. The crowd of knights went wild, shouting in awe at his power. He got back up again. Adrian charged him head-on, their swords locking together. In a shower of sparks against the backdrop of the towering castle, Adrian spun trailing blue flames and unleashed a strike. He chuckled, savoring the thrill of the battle. The knight defended desperately, and then more knights charged in. Adrian became a whirlwind of blue light, slashing left and right, his sword an extension of his will. The tip of his sword lowered to the ground. The sun was now setting, casting orange-gold shadows across the training grounds. Adrian stood alone in the center, panting heavily, surrounded by defeated knights. He looked down at his sword, sweat dripping from his chin. The spectators roared, their faces beaming with excitement and respect. Pawn has been defeated. That was His Highness's 5th consecutive victory. Deep within Adrian's soul, a transformation was taking place. A figure of light stood amidst a storm of blue energy. Having weathered 1,000 waves across 100 battles, I shall stand firm even before a wave greater than this. Ding, a system window appeared. A new verse has been added to the training poem. Only now do I rise to grasp the sword. The blue energy condensed, becoming brighter and purer. The level of the training poem has become extraordinary. The training poem has changed to match its level. The training poem has become the poem of the duel. But, Adrian whispered, his vision blurring, I succeeded. His legs gave out and he collapsed forward. A pair of strong hands caught him before he hit the ground. Your Highness, are you all right? We offer our respect for the victory your Highness has achieved. Around them, the faces of the other knights beamed with admiration in the twilight. Respect to the first prince's sword, one shouted. Respect to his fighting spirit. Another yelled, we offer our respect for his victory. Adrian blinked, confused by this sudden admiration. What is all this? Just a moment ago, weren't they all eager to tear me to shreds? Watching the scene from the sidelines, the Count's expression softened. They are simple men, swords and victory. Nothing excites them more. Looking at your face, you must have thought you'd only earn their resentment, the Count continued. A glorious defeat is worth more than a cowardly victory. When both sides have fought with all their might, does victory or defeat even matter? Still, another knight chimed in. Dunham is probably a little resentful, though. The red-haired knight said, he'd better be. He has to hand over that sword he boasted so much about to His Highness now. And another knight laughed heartily. Serves him right, he was way too arrogant about that sword. Adrian sat on the ground listening to their laughter. He chuckled softly to himself. I thought everything I knew had been forgotten and cast aside along with my mind magic. But it seems at least one thing hasn't changed. Indifferent in the face of defeat and worshipful of the strong, the spirit of the knights. The brilliant sunlight cast long shadows across the courtyard. The stones of Iron Lion Castle glowed as horses neighed, eagerly ready for departure. The carriage was ready while the knights bustled with final preparations. Adrian stood before the assembled crowd. A gentle breeze stirred the hem of his cloak as he gave them a warm smile. Well then, until we meet again. Count George Wallerden bowed deeply in respect. I sincerely pray for your well-being until then, Your Highness. Adrian nodded. You take care as well, Count. Oh, and Count Wallerden, please keep what happened during my stay here a secret. A virtual question mark floated above Count George Wallerden's head as he blinked, confused, unable to comprehend this strange request. Wouldn't it be to Your Highness's advantage to let everyone know about this?
but Adrian just gave a sly, mischievous grin in reply, smirking. There's someone I want to mess with a little. The journey back was long. The convoy stopped in a clearing. It was surrounded by a dense forest. A knight announced, his voice echoing through the trees. We'll make camp here for the night. I'll go scout the area for a bit. Go on, Adrian nodded. Go. He turned and watched her go, thinking to himself, well, Awen will get used to it soon enough. He mumbled, observing the camp activities. A wave of fatigue hit him, and he stretched his arms wide. I should probably head inside and rest, too. Huh. Inside the tent, a brilliant aura of cleanliness and service greeted him. Adelia stood there, having changed back into her maid uniform, glowing with an inexplicable radiance. Your Highness, you've returned. Adrian stared at her, astonished. His mind reeled at the absurdity of the scene. The person I took in was supposed to be an S-rank sword genius, yet she's still doing things only a maid would do. Adelia noticed his hesitation and tilted her head. You look worried, Your Highness. Is there perhaps something that displeases you? Yes. Adrian collapsed onto the bed, dismissing the thought with a wave of his hand. Never mind. You may leave. Adelia bowed and retreated with an adorably worried pout. Yes, Your Highness. Left alone in the quiet of the tent, Adrian looked up at the ceiling, his mind drifting back to the events at the castle. The Iron Lion Knights. They're really different from what I thought. He recalled the status windows that he saw floating above the knights during sword sparring. Swordsmanship, B. Swordsmanship, C. When I used the power of judgment, most of the official knights didn't possess swordsmanship talents exceeding B rank. In the past, these were people who would have struggled to even reach the intermediate swordmaster level, even after a lifetime of arduous training. Ordinary people who would have faded away in vain. And yet people like that have reached a realm equivalent to a swordmaster while only in their 20s or 30s. The qualities a hero possesses have declined to an incomparable degree, but the qualities of ordinary people have increased significantly. It's because of the mana chains. He was someone who should have been able to aim for transcendence in the past. That's why I was so displeased when he threw that potential away. However, this is an era where there isn't even a chance to build achievements that surpass the extraordinary level. In the end, it's all due to the flow of time. I must admit it, I don't understand this era. So, I'll start learning from scratch. Suddenly, the sound of applause interrupted his meditation. A voice rang out. That's a good mindset. Adrian looked up, startled. Count Belvenhat stood at the tent's entrance, clapping with a rare look of approval. It's not too late. If you put in the effort from now on, you can achieve your dream. Adrian blinked. What dream? The Count spread his arms wide, completely misunderstanding. Haven't you already captured the hearts of the Iron Lion Knights? If it were the other princes, they wouldn't have been able to blend in with that crowd. So naturally. That was a very wise judgment. Adrian stared at him, his face contorting in a mix of horror and confusion. What? What is wrong with this man? He yelled. Are you insane, uncle? The Count looked bewildered. Don't you remember the terms of the bet I made with you? He immediately retorted, if it's the bet about defeating the 3 princes, that's still... He cut him off decisively. No, our bet was to defeat a 2-chain knight. Adrian had defeated Dunham with his wooden sword. He thought to himself, then I've practically already won that bet. He stepped forward, his voice echoing. I will do as I promised then. As the Count of the Kingdom and the commander of the Northern Army, I will officially support the first prince of the kingdom, Adrian Leonberg. Adrian stared blankly. He thought to himself, what is he talking about? Officially support? Don't tell me. The Count gave a thumbs up towards the tiny tent below. Just trust me. Adrian fumed internally. When did I ever say I wanted to be king? The scene then fades to the splendid white royal capital under a brilliant blue sky. The Count's declaration had become a real bombshell. Voices echoed from every corner. Your Highness, congratulations. Inside the palace halls, knights and maids were beaming. We sincerely congratulate you. This is truly a joyous occasion for the kingdom. The newly appointed royal knights and soldiers created a stir, and the new attendants and servants sent from the palace were just as busy. And I've suddenly found myself at the center of it all. He threw up his hands. God, what a mess. Send them all back immediately. The knight standing silently beside him shook his head. They came by royal decree. Even if I ordered them to leave, they would not listen. Adrian added, then at least get them out of my sight. This is annoying me to death. After his meaningful glance, the maid nodded knowingly. He then took refuge in the high-ceilinged library. He sat on a soft velvet chair, sighing as sunlight streamed through the tall windows. Finally, some peace and quiet. Better yet, bang! The double doors were thrown open violently. "Brother, are you in there?" Adrian looked at him. "Why are you here at this hour?" Julian stood with his hands on his hips. "You're really good at playing the fool, aren't you?" Secretly learning swordsmanship from Count Belvenhat and even revealing such grand ambitions. Adrian looked at him with a blank face. Who learned what from whom? Julian clenched his fists. "I was actually planning to at least let you save face, and you pull something like this." "I was going to let him lose without too much embarrassment," he replied sarcastically. "Wow, I'm moved to tears." He pointed an accusing finger at Adrian, his eyes blazing with rivalry. "You've made a huge mistake because I'm going to make you pay dearly for deceiving me." Adrian held his forehead, his face darkening with frustration, thinking, "This guy, that guy. I already said I have no interest in the throne. I need to find the mastermind who caused all this." The scene returns to the private quiet of the tent, continuing the conversation with the Count. "So, Uncle, I will play along for a time. So please withdraw at an appropriate time because I have no interest in things like the throne. Why did you start all this without discussing it with me?" He paused, then asked a sharp question. "Are you worried about the Banhat family? The Banhat are the shield that protects the kingdom from the monsters of the northern mountains." The Count smiled confidently. "As long as the royal family and the aristocracy don't forget the harshness of winter, nothing bad will happen to the Banhat clan." Adrian looked at him doubtfully, but also felt a sense of relief. "If that's the case, then that's a relief." The Count added, "It's only a matter of time. It's bound to happen anyway. Do you truly not know the fate of a firstborn who doesn't inherit the throne? The situation won't change just because you keep your head down. If you need time to accept the situation, I will give you as much as you like. However, remember this. The legitimacy of the firstborn will not disappear unless you die." Left alone in the tent, Adrian sat in the dim light. "I already told you. No matter how much time you give me, I will not change. What I truly seek is the power and strength that has reached my transcendent realm. Therefore, there's no way I would want something as trivial as the right to the throne." That's certainly what I thought. The scene changes to a later time. The grand doors of the banquet hall are wide open. The room is filled with guests in lavish gowns and suits, and the floor is decorated with golden, intricate patterns. A herald announces, his voice echoing through the crowd. The legitimate bloodline of the Leonberg kingdom, the firstborn of the royal Leonberg family. His Highness First Prince Adrian Leonberg is now entering. Adrian stepped into the hall. He wore a regal outfit, a high-collared black coat with crimson accents and golden cords. The crowd parted to make way for him, their faces a mixture of curiosity, awe, and judgment, at least until the party began. Adrian strode forward with a piercing gaze. The crowd was whispering. Below, the nobles, resplendent in velvet and silk, couldn't take their eyes off the completely transformed prince. A woman gasped, exclaiming, "Unbelievable, such a dignified appearance." He's the spitting image of the king in his youth. Adrian walked down the last few steps with a stoic expression. He thought to himself, "They're making such a fuss just because I lost a little weight, and these are the nobles of the kingdom. What a joke!" Status revealing their true nature. Characteristic heart of a serpent. Ghostly purple-black snakes coiled around the nobles, their scales shimmering with malice. It was the mark of dark karma accumulated by those who prey on others and trample on lives. To think they all carry such filth with them. The only one worth paying attention to is... Adrian recognized him immediately. "You. Since you're here, you should at least come and greet me." He responded immediately. "Oh, Prince, my apologies. I must thank you for the invitation." He observed, thinking, the only one who, though incompetent, is not corrupt. Yes, this will be enough. "As vessels to hold the seeds I will sow from now on." The resounding shout of a guard cut through the whispers, silencing the entire hall. The massive double doors swung open. Officially recognized for his authority by the Emperor of the Bogon Empire, Marquis Montpoli of Bogon. As Adrian turned, a short, obese man with a colorful hat and a purple cloak swaggered in, followed by guards. "Ambassador Kuhn of Bogon is entering." That name struck Adrian like a physical blow. "What?" He stopped in front of Adrian, a slick, smug smile on his face. "It's been a long time, Prince." Adrian stared at the man. Bogon. The word echoed in his mind, triggering a violent crimson flashback. The sworn enemy that my comrades and I fought against for so long. from 4 years ago bearing the name that left countless scars on this country. How dare he stand before me? Suddenly red wine arced through the air, drenching the ambassador's face and his expensive formal wear. Adrian stood frozen. Marquis Billy Fay, an old nobleman with a gray beard, hurried over with a look of horror. "Prince, are you all right?" "I was in such a hurry to greet the prince that I apologize, your highness." After Adrian snapped back to reality, he said, "I'll have to go change my clothes." Billy Fay bowed low, sweating profusely. "This old body of mine failed me, and I have committed a grave disrespect." A knight approached Adrian. "Your highness, I will escort you." Adrian looked at the old marquis who had taken the blame. "Who is he?" The knight replied, "That is His Excellency Marquis Belief." Adrian observed the old man bowing respectfully. "Belief, I suppose. Turns out not all of them are rotten. Thanks to that, my head has cooled down a bit." A moment later, Adrian was wiping his face. The count opened the door and entered. "I heard there was an incident. Marcus Billyfane said you looked as if you were about to cause some trouble. It seems he wasn't speaking complete nonsense. What in the world were you planning to do?" Adrian replied, his voice firm. "I'm not that reckless. It's just, I simply cannot understand. The cruel Bagone clan flaunting their power right in the heart of the kingdom, and the nobles giving him a sincere respect they don't even show the royal family. There is an atmosphere too tense to be called peace, and a relationship too one-sided to be called an alliance." Adrian asked, clenching his fist, "Just when did this country fall into such a state?" The count looked away, a weary expression on his face. "It's not a particularly special history. In the past, the kingdom stood firm against countless invasions from the empire. Outstanding knights came forward to repel the enemy. However, as time passed, the empire grew stronger and the gap between us widened. A panoramic view shows the empire's massive, sprawling capital model. Faced with an empire that had become a superpower, a smaller kingdom ultimately has no choice but to kneel." Adrian's eyes widened as he realized something. "Don't tell me. It's because of that." A map appeared showing the small territory of Leonberg completely dwarfed by the vast Bagone Empire. But even as a small country on the border, the kingdom still had something that allowed them to confront the mighty empire. From the nation's very founding, achievements had been flawlessly accumulated. There were ordinary things, and there were extraordinary things, heroic tales, legends, and even myths. The war soul canticles. We've lost all of that. He looked up at the count, his expression hardening with resolve. "Uncle, I've changed my mind." He asked, "What do you mean by that?" He replied confidently and clearly, "Becoming king, I'll give it a try." The count's eyes widened in shock. Adrian thought to himself, "I might regret this decision, but it's what I have to do. After all, I helped build half of this country myself." On the second day of the feast, brilliant sunlight shone down on the white stone palace. A voice echoed, "The first prince of the Leonberg royal family. Adrian Leonberg is now entering." As Adrian stepped into the hall, he adjusted his jacket, his face showing the utmost confidence. Walking beside him is his uncle Count Bevenhat of the North. Adrian glanced to the side. The nobles bowed, but they all avoided his gaze. This was an incredibly lax formality. It's even worse than how one would treat a foreign noble. His mind drifted back 400 years, to when my comrade in arms stood before the people. No one ever thought he would become king because he was nothing more than a country boy who had run from some remote village. Even among those who had been stripped of everything and cast out, he was nothing special. And yet that boy still stepped before the people, just as I am now. Before the blind flock I stand tall. Notification panels appeared continuously. King's Canticle. Current ability cannot handle the canticle's level. A portion of the canticle is being skipped. A portion of the canticle is being skipped. Using just one verse of the canticle is equivalent to 1/4. Adrian gritted his teeth, feeling the strain. Compared to the true dragon-slaying canticle, this much is still bearable, because this canticle is only at the heroic level, not mythological. Nevertheless, blue flames coalesced above his head, forming a beautiful spectral crown. There is no canticle more fitting for this situation than this one. The nobles stared, struck silent in amazement. A wave of blue mana swept over them. Even the most corrupt nobles gazed with reverence at Adrian and his cloak of mana, flowing blue behind him, the crown shining atop his head. For now, this is enough. He turned back to the crowd, a dignified smile on his face. "You may raise your heads." Suddenly, a stream of dark purple energy cut through the air. Adrian froze. This energy. An elven hood was lowered. A voice echoed, "How surprising. To think someone still remembers the canticles."
Adrian's face went pale. He stared at her in horror. Why is that crazy bitch here? The most beautiful creations ever molded by God. A world within an illusion appeared with brilliant, pure sunlight filtering through the lush green canopy of a great ancient forest. A benevolent race that would never harm even the smallest of creatures. The gardeners of the green forest, with a lifespan of 300 to 1,000 years, that is all that people commonly think when they hear the word elf. However, the reality is that they are a cruel race, one that always uses its beauty as a lure to destroy its enemies. The High Elves, and those born with the rank of hero from the cradle, are the most dangerous of them all. Inside the vast, hazy hall, Adrian was facing the very embodiment of that danger. He stared intently at the silver-haired elf woman. Draped in a luxurious purple robe, his mind was racing with anxiety. Not only that, this isn't even a normal high elf. Having lived for nearly a millennium, she's a grand high elf. Her name is Sigrun the Magic Sword Dancer. She was a member of the expeditionary force that slaughtered the Mad Dragon 400 years ago. A terrifying memory from 4 centuries ago suddenly flooded Adrian's mind. She was crazed, covered in blood, reaching for a magnificent sword with a maniacal smile. That sword was Adrian's past life. She asked with a twisted obsession, "If your master dies, will you come with me? I'll make sure you're never bored for the rest of your life." So what if you're just a sword? I desire you more than anything, especially because you are a sword. Back in the present, Adrian stared at her, cold sweat beading on his face. And that's the same crazy bitch who tormented me to such a horrifying extent? She probably doesn't recognize me, right? Even though I just recited the King's Canticle, something she knows so well. Her face drew close to his, her expression filled with curiosity as she asked, "Have we met somewhere before? How strange. Why does your highness give me such a familiar feeling?" Adrian tried to keep a rigid posture to hide his panic, replying, "This is the first time I have ever seen an elf with my own eyes." "Oh, is that so?" she asked again. Without a hint of hesitation, Adrian replied, "It is." Sigrun gently tapped a long, slender finger on her chin, her eyes narrowing. Adrian maintained a polite smile, but his lips were pressed into a thin line. Inside, he was terrified. He swallowed hard, realizing the gravity of the situation. Liar. Even 400 years ago, Sigrun was one of the strongest beings I had ever met in my entire life as a sword. There's no telling what kind of monster she has become now. Sigrun broke the silence, her voice smooth and calculating. When a human first sees one of us, they usually have one of 2 reactions. The vast majority become enchanted. But those who have reached a high level in martial arts feel a sense of unease. However, from what I can see, it seems your highness has not yet reached that level. Adrian reacted quickly but calmly. My tastes are just a little particular. Sigrun fell silent. Her eyes locked on his as if searching for a crack in his facade. After a tense standoff, Sigrun pulled up the hood of her cloak. Pulling it over her silver hair, she turned and walked away. She left behind a brief message. "It was a pleasure meeting you." As she walked down the brightly lit hallway, Adrian watched her back, his face pale and covered in a cold sweat. He let out a long sigh as if a massive weight had been lifted. For now, I've survived. A short while later, he faced the pathetic lineup of candidates the Queen had assembled for him. The Queen's voice rang out, "Too small." Another woman was hiding a frightened little girl behind her skirt. "This one won't even dare to look me in the eye." A burly woman, who looked fierce, was glaring at him with fire in her eyes. The Queen immediately commented, "Is she here to pick a fight?" A child sat blankly on the floor. Another one too small. This won't do at all. He even saw a dog and a wooden doll in the lineup. The Queen held her head in despair, exasperatedly lecturing him. "This is an occasion to choose a crown princess for the prince. You can't expect them to be like the women you normally associate with. A future crown princess must be wise, benevolent, healthy, and come from a respectable family." Suddenly, another voice called out, "The Elven delegation requests an audience with your majesty." Sigrun stepped forward and bowed gracefully. "I am Sigrun of the Mistletoe clan. I extend my greetings to the beautiful Queen Margarita." The Queen smiled warmly, completely unaware of the danger. "It has been a long time since our kingdom has had a visit from the elves. I must say this is quite a surprise." Sigrun straightened up, addressing the Queen directly. "It seems to me, your majesty, that you are searching for a woman to be the prince's partner. Is that correct?" The Queen replied, "You've guessed correctly." A confident smile played on Sigrun's lips. "I am, of course, a high elf. In human terms, that makes me equivalent to a noble from a most illustrious family line.
Adrian glared at her, his anger simmering beneath his sweat. What the hell is she scheming? He thought. Sigran continued her flawless presentation surrounded by a radiant aura. And as for my age, it just so happens to be not that far off from His Highness. A miniature version of Adrian was screaming frantically in his mind. Liar! We're nearly 1,000 years apart. How can she lie so brazenly without even batting an eye? She added, I've heard that an elf of eternal beauty makes for an ideal partner to a human, no. And there are also those who always stay by my side and follow me. In human terms, they are like a company of knights. In fact, from the very first moment I saw His Highness, I felt that my destiny and his were intertwined. Adrian's face lost all color, his pupils shrinking in absolute horror. He knew the terrifying truth about her race. He thought, elves never lie about destiny and bonds. That means everything she just said, she truly believes it. Suddenly, the main hall erupted in a commotion. The queen touched her cheek in astonishment, whispering, Oh my goodness. The nobles began to buzz with chatter. Come to think of it, I've heard, that elves take destiny very seriously. Does this mean we're about to have a marriage alliance with the elves? Good heavens. Adrian realized he had to stop this insanity at once. He strode forward and forcefully grabbed her wrist, pulling her out of the great hall, his face a mask of fury. We need to talk for a moment. A noble shouted from behind them. How disrespectful. Adrian dragged Sigrun into an empty room and slammed the heavy wooden door shut. He released her and turned back, his blue eyes cold and questioning. Sigran, state your true purpose? Sigrun rubbed her cheek, smiling with false innocence as she replied, I only came to strengthen the friendship between my clan and the kingdom you know. Adrian's face grew even darker. He refused to play her game. I will ask again. Elder of the elf clan Sigrun. Her eyes widened slightly. Surprised that he had stripped away her mask, he revealed her identity, an executioner who has handled the dirty work for her family for hundreds of years, the Sword of the Mistletoe clan. Are you here to investigate? Or to carry out a sentence? Sigrun's innocent smile vanished, replaced by a threatening smirk. How interesting, she said. How do you know about me? Adrian stood his ground, silent and resolute. He analyzed the terrifying threat before him. She was likely a monster whose power his current self. He couldn't even begin to comprehend. The fact that she felt destiny from him meant her own rank was high enough to perceive a piece of the other past inscribed upon his soul. Sigrun stepped closer, shadows writhing around her like venomous snakes. She taunted him, You know that I am an executioner, and yet you still don't realize how foolish it is to remain silent in front of one. Adrian didn't flinch. A confident smile cut through the oppressive darkness. He shot back, Oh, I know it very well. Just as I know that running your mouth in front of an executioner is equally foolish, so cut the games. Sigrun, do not interfere with my destiny. Adrian quickly formulated a survival strategy. He thought, right now she's only mildly curious about me. If I can just maintain the status quo, the fate of a lowly human is to be torn to shreds by this mad elf woman. It's better to spark a greater interest. I must become a gourmet delicacy. Something so precious needs time to ripen and be savored, too valuable to just be tasted and then discarded. Sigrun leaned forward, her eyes wide with genuine interest. She asked, Who are you really? Adrian created a cover story answering, For now I am just a pitiful prince cast aside by my own father. She pressed him, And what about the real you? He said, Who knows? If you're so curious, then just wait and see. She stared at him intently. I knew there was something strange. I kept wondering why I was sent on such a trivial mission. There was no reason or meaning to it at all. But now I know why I was sent here. It was for you, my good sir. Adrian watched that crazed delight with absolute revulsion, his face twisting in disgust. Whether it was 400 years ago or now, she was still a completely terrifying woman. After reaching a dangerous agreement, the two of them stepped out of the room. They strode side by side down the red carpet of the main hall, Adrian holding Sigrun's hand tightly, putting on an act, a performance in front of the stunned crowd. The noble's jaws dropped as they passed by. Adrian stopped before the queen's throne, his face breaking into a charming yet completely fake smile. He announced, I have something to say. I will be engaged to Sigrun. Sigrun clung to his arm, resting her head on his shoulder with a blissful smile, her cheeks flushing despite his confident exterior. Adrian was dying on the inside at the thought of having to call her name so affectionately like this. For now I can't go against Sigrun's wishes. An engagement, even if it's just to buy some time. He looked at the queen, delivering the decisive blow in his delaying plan. He said, Because this is too important a matter to be decided hastily, I plan to take some time to get to know her better." The queen touched her chin. She looked relieved by this delay. "You agree that would be for the best." Adrian analyzed the perspectives of all involved. For the queen, this time would be used to calculate the value of the engagement. For Siglin, this time was for the delicacy meat to ripen. And as for myself, I will use this time to build enough strength to escape this crazy elf. In a lavishly decorated office, the air was thick with pure rage. The third prince? Julian slammed his fist down on the wooden desk. His face twisted with hatred and jealousy as he screamed, "Damn it, you bastard! The only thing you have on me is that you were born first." He stood there, his chest heaving with fury as he recalled the recent chain of humiliating events. The ghosts of thorns and roses haunted his mind. Not long ago, his uncle suddenly appeared and declared his support. Then he went and plucked the flower of the Iron Lion. And now he dares to aim for an elf. "I've already promised to duel that bastard soon." "Killing him would only complicate things, so I'll cut him down just enough so that he can no longer call himself a man. I will grind you into the dirt." The day of the duel arrived. Under a clear blue sky in the grand courtyard of the royal palace, knights gathered in large numbers, forming an excited crowd of spectators. The referee stood proudly in silver armor and a red cloak, his voice echoing with absolute authority. "This duel is under the official sanction of the commander, of the Royal Knights, and the holder of the noble title Silver Lion. I, Chamhill Stewart, hereby witness and confirm this duel. Therefore, no one is permitted to object to the outcome. Your Highnesses, raise your swords." Facing a determined Julian, the first prince simply covered his mouth and let out a long, bored yawn. He looked completely unimpressed by all the pageantry. He thought to himself, "It's just one sword strike. Why is there so much talking?" Julian sneered with arrogant confidence. "I've arranged so much for my dear older brother. I even brought a whole crowd. Do you like it?" Adrian looked at him with dull eyes, his posture so relaxed it was insulting. "Try not to disappoint the audience. I've been thinking about this for a while." "You talk too much." Enraged by the blatant disrespect, faint blue lightning began to crackle fiercely around his body. "I hope you can keep that same tone after this duel is over." However, Adrian's blue eyes suddenly blazed with a terrifying cold light. A massive blue aura erupted from his blade, turning the surrounding air into a vortex of mana. He swung his sword with horrifying lethal force. "I was planning to play around a bit, but I'm kinda busy." Bam! A single blow sent the third prince flying backward like a broken doll. Julian slammed hard onto the ground, coughing up blood. The entire arena fell into stunned, absolute silence. Even the referee's eyes were wide with disbelief as he thought, "Is that really the first prince I once knew?" The referee stepped forward, breaking the silence. "The winner is His Highness, the First Prince. I declare that His Highness, the Third Prince, is unable to continue." The crowd erupted in panicked whispers. "No way!" Adrian threw a contemptuous look over his shoulder at the murmuring nobles. These so-called nobles gathering to watch a children's fight. Then the rumors began to spread. As the nobles chattered, "Did Prince Julian really lose? He's one of the most promising prospects in the kingdom. How could he lose to the first prince who's only been training for a few months?" Meanwhile, in the infirmary, Julian was covered in bandages. He awoke in a frenzy with a scream of ultimate pain and fury. You useless piece of trash, I will pay you back once and for all." A knight stepped forward and began to speak, as soon as the match was over. The first prince departed the capital with Count Bannerhat, who left with a visibly shocked expression. "Where is he going?" A knight answered hesitantly. "Sir, he said he would head north to the Banner domain." Under a gloomy, snow-filled sky, the royal carriage was escorted by heavily armored knights. Crossing the frozen fields, Adrian sat comfortably with a smug grin on his face. Count Bannerhat observed him and remarked dryly, "You've certainly learned how to ride a horse." Quite convincingly, Adrian beamed, full of confidence. "Once you get the hang of it, it comes pretty fast, doesn't it?" The count sighed, regretting his compliment. "I shouldn't have said anything. You really need to learn some humility." "But why are you in such a rush?" "The festivities are over. Wouldn't it be better to rest for a few days?" Adrian's smile faded. "There's no place for me in a capital in a kingdom that can't even recognize its own master and grovels before the Empire's dogs. I have no intention of pathetically begging for them to take my side." The count considered this riding beside the carriage. "You think you'll fit in better with soldiers and knights than with nobles. They aren't as sharp with numbers as the aristocracy, but they are far more conservative. Do you think winning their hearts will be easy?" Adrian imagined himself cheering alongside the soldiers. Covered in mud, he returned to his confident smile. You build camaraderie by rolling around in the mud together. What's there to worry about? However, the Count still expressed his concern. I still can't shake the feeling that you're being too hasty. Adrian's thoughts darkened as a horrific image of Sickland, holding a small, helpless version of himself, came to mind. He thought to himself, it's because if I hesitate, I'll really end up marrying that madwoman. Even in the past, everyone she set her sights on met a ruinous end. I need to become stronger before that happens. In a peaceful capital, that's a distant dream, so I must leave. I will accelerate my own growth and forge my sword elsewhere, a place where a man is tested more than anywhere else. The battlefield is where I belong. The expedition arrived at the magnificent snow-capped peaks. The Count glanced at Adrian and then spoke. Those are the Blaze Mountains, the border our family has guarded for generations. Adrian shivered violently, wrapping his arms around himself. I'm freezing to death. The Count offered a simple solution. If you can't stand it, why not get back in the carriage? Adrian stubbornly refused. No, it's fine. I have to get used to this cold. The old tutor was comfortably peeking out. I feel like I'm just getting in the way, to be honest. This old man is taking up an entire carriage. Adrian added seriously. What did you even come here for? The old man laughed heartily. If not now, when would I ever get the chance to witness this harsh north for myself? Besides, the book I'm writing this time is certain to be of help to your highness. Adrian turned away. He grumbled to himself, this old man is such a pain. He looked over at the loyal knight riding beside him. Awen, are you all right? The wind up ahead will be bone-chilling. Awen smiled brightly. I'm fine. Adrian added, if it gets too hard, we can always switch places. Her body was trembling, but she spoke to him earnestly. As a knight, how could I possibly put my own comfort first? Adrian smiled, relieved. At least one of them is full of enthusiasm. What a relief. Meanwhile, the rest of them were disgruntled, complaining about being dragged along by royal order. If Cass were here, he'd whip them into shape properly. A while earlier, the king had told Adrian, the royal knights are not your personal order. Don't you also keep many knights directly? Under your command, though I wonder if you've ever truly considered them knights. Adrian scowled, venting about the king's inflexibility. That damn narrow-minded old man. That's why Cass couldn't come north with us. Even though I acted as an executioner, he's still my man. The king's attitude feels a bit excessive. There's clearly something going on behind the scenes. Suddenly, the weather turned harsh. The snowflakes became a furious blizzard in an instant. The wind howled violently. Count Banner's shouted commands cut through even the roaring storm. We need to move faster. We'll be trapped by the blizzard and unable to move. The snowflakes had turned into a fierce snowstorm. In the blink of an eye, it became a brutal, forced march. We'll have to leave the carriages behind. The Count glanced back and yelled, Take only the horses and proceed on foot. If we don't hurry, Adrian thought. A mana-infused shout cut through the howling wind. Adelia, he called out, holding out a hand to guide her. She took his hand, her face flushing. Your Highness, thank you. As the chaos grew, Awen stepped forward to check on him. Your Highness, are you all right? I'm fine, Adrian answered firmly. The strong wind nearly blew the knights over. They shouted to maintain order. Watch out, you're going to crash. Wait, the wind's too strong. Frustrated, Adrian stepped forward. Awen, take care of Adelia. Awen responded immediately. Yes, Your Highness. Seeing the soldiers struggling with their heavy equipment, Adrian shouted in a rage, You fools, drop your shields. Of course you're getting knocked over. When you're holding giant shields like that, draw your swords and get rid of anything cumbersome. We can come back for it later, you the big guy. Take the lead now. Everyone form a line behind him. The seasoned northern knights observed this display of leadership. With deep respect, one of them remarked, Looks like we won't need to intervene. I was going to let him go through his initiation before helping out. Does His Highness have actual combat experience? The march continued, testing the limits of human endurance. A single step in that blizzard felt as heavy as lead. A soldier collapsed in the deep snow. The knights panicked. Your Highness, a soldier has fallen behind. Without a moment's hesitation, Adrian roared, Out of the way! He pushed through the ranks and hoisted the unconscious soldier onto his own shoulder. What are you doing? Just keep marching? The knights were stunned into silence. Yes, Your Highness. Gasping in the biting cold, Adrian cursed the sky. This damn blizzard. If you're going to stop, then just stop already. And as if in answer to his iron will, the storm suddenly and magically vanished. The clear blue sky returned as if it had all been a lie. Before them stood an awe-inspiring massive fortress carved into the very heart of the mountain. Count Banner stepped forward, striking his fist against his chest in a proud, resounding salute. As the rightful ruler of Banner and commander of the kingdom's 3rd Legion, I welcome the visit of the first prince. Adrian looked up. A radiant, confident smile spread across his face. The Countess smiled in return, her scarred face softening with sincere warmth. I sincerely welcome you to the East Fortress. The cold wind howled through the desolate peaks of the Blaze Mountains, whipping around the colossal stone walls of the fortress in the northernmost part of the kingdom. This was the East Fortress, a harsh and unforgiving citadel. It was built to stop the wave of monsters pouring out from the treacherous peaks. For the common soldiers, this was a living nightmare. They gritted their teeth, their breath turning to smoke in the freezing air as one of them lamented, "It's brutally cold, dangerous, and the survival rate is the worst. This is a place I never want to set foot in a second time." In contrast, those born and raised in Banner Hat considered protecting this massive gate their lifelong pride. The heavy iron gate groaned open, welcoming a sliver of pale winter sunlight. Standing solemnly in the inner courtyard was a young man with sharp features and dark blue hair wearing black armor lined with white fur. He slammed a fist to his chest in a disciplined salute before Count Buvenhat and declared Vincent Bannerhat. As of today, I am ending my duty as the acting commander and returning to my position as commander of the Ranger Corps. It's a relief to see you've returned safely, Father. The Count placed a warm hand on his shoulder, a rare smile softening his weathered face. You've done well, Vincent. Standing nearby, Andrian watched the exchange with amusement. Leaning in with a mischievous grin, he cut in, "What's this, sir? You have a son?" The Count replied, "Do you think I'd reach this age without having a single child?" The protagonist pointed and added, "Now that I look closely, the two of you look quite alike, especially that stubborn mouth." The Count then made the formal introduction. "Vincent, this is His Highness the First Prince Adrian." Vincent stepped forward, his stern face emotionless, and bowed respectfully. "Commander of the Ranger Corps, Vincent of House Buvenhat greets His Highness the First Prince." Adrian flashed a radiant smile, seemingly oblivious to the underlying tension. However, beneath the polite exterior, Vincent clenched his teeth. He stared at the ground, his mind blazing with indignation. The East Fortress is a bastion for true warriors, men who cast aside their lives for a higher cause. This is no place for some spoiled brat kicked out of the capital to come and waste time. Why did Father bring this person here? Later, Vincent confronted his father. "Father, what exactly is going on?" "It is just as you've heard. I have decided to become his patron, and Andrian will be staying in Banner Hat for the time being." Hearing this, his voice grew more irritated. "Hasn't even the king abandoned him? Isn't he that scoundrel you yourself once harshly criticized for his lack of talent?" The Count turned his back and said simply, "People can change. I only ask one thing of you, Vincent. Observe him without prejudice." In the dimly lit strategy room, Count Buvenhat asked, "How goes the subjugation of the monster tribes?" Vincent reported, "We've been steadily reducing their numbers, but many areas have yet to be cleared. Now that you're here, we will proceed in earnest, so the remaining force is the Ranger team. The problem is the Oros. A group of under 20 Oros has settled near the mountain pass. With numbers like that, it's difficult to deal with them using only the Rangers' bows and arrows." Andrian unexpectedly interjected, raising it to the light with a dangerous smile and declaring, "Here, I'll take care of it." A knight standing opposite him said, "Now, Your Highness, the creatures of the Blade Mountains are not like ordinary orcs," Vincent added. "If something goes wrong, it could disrupt the Rangers' operations." He glanced over, addressing the Count. The Count remained silent for a moment, observing Andrian's unshakable confidence, then asked Vincent about the Oros's strength. "Vincent, what are the official numbers and strength of the Oros?" Vincent replied, "So far we've confirmed a maximum of 20. No Oros warriors or shamans have been seen, but their presence cannot be ruled out." The Count looked back at Andrian with a knowing, challenging smile. "Are you confident?" The words made Vincent jump in immediately. "Father, that pass is one of the main routes for the Rangers. If we make a mistake and it turns into a prolonged battle, future campaigns will become twice as difficult. And if something were to happen to you, Bannerhat's reputation would be damaged." The protagonist looked at him and thought to himself, "He's taught this one very thoroughly, hasn't he?" The Count just replied nonchalantly, "That's enough. Don't worry anymore." "Andrian, what do you need?" Andrian listed immediately. "First, 3 guides. Upgrade my men's equipment. If you have crossbows, lend us some."
The Count nodded in agreement. That's not difficult. I'll arrange it. The knights looked at each other, not daring to say anything. A moment later, the protagonist's voice rang out. We will move out. The assigned escort team form up knights. Handy looked completely bewildered. Forgive me. What do you mean? Andrian explained the situation with a bright smile. We've received a mission to subjugate an orc tribe. There are 20 enemies, which may or may not include warriors or shamans. He replied, stunned. Your Highness, the 3rd Legion is already here, so why must we? Our mission is to escort you. Andrian replied smoothly. Well, then that's perfect. You have to follow me to protect me anyway. The message from the 3rd Legion should arrive today. Get your equipment and report back to me. The protagonist thought to himself, whether I like it or not, these are the soldiers assigned to me. I might as well make effective use of them. They weren't reliable during the blizzard, but... He narrowed his eyes, his blue pupils flashing, as the special power-activated status windows appeared above the knights. Han's deck attributes, swordsmanship C formal drills, encirclement defense, infantry defense formation. He silently assessed them. They were elites chosen by the royal family. Looking at the knight named Joseph, the status window revealed skills in interrogation and disguise. Adrian narrowed his eyes suspiciously, even though a suspicious person had infiltrated. Outside, Adrian approached with Vincent. Adrian asked in surprise, Are you the guide? Vincent frowned, warning, Your Highness may not realize it, but if this fails, the consequences will be far greater than you can imagine. Adrian gave a warm, reassuring smile. We will not fail. Vincent snapped, You're taking this far too lightly, Your Highness. The air between the two immediately grew tense. Adrian maintained his smile and analyzed Vincent's strength. Couldn't see his status window. He must be at least a 3-chain knight. He realized the people following Vincent were actually knights disguised as rangers, and smiled inwardly at this hidden safety net. Before departing, he ordered Adelia to stay. Adelia, don't worry, I'm not taking you with me. He knew of the violent nature of her latent ability, and thought it would be troublesome if her trait awakened in the wrong way by accident. She replied to him, I apologize, my lord. The expedition ventured deep into the frozen wilderness. Adrian marched at the front, leading the formation through the frost-covered trees. Vincent grumbled incessantly to everyone. Conserve your stamina while walking. If your stamina drops, your limbs will grow stiff and your combat ability will be affected, especially in the snow and ice of Blaze Mountain. Rangers, you must watch your footing. The prince thought to himself, this guy lectures worse than my own father. Suddenly, a rustling sound broke the silence. A white rabbit darted across the snowy path. Vincent let out a sigh of relief, but his instincts kicked in. He raised his copper binoculars, scanning the dense tree line ahead, and he saw a horrifying sight. A group of massive orcs with glowing red eyes were gnawing on a bloody corpse. Vincent urgently reported to Adrian, There's a group of orcs up ahead. What are our orders? Adrian didn't hesitate. He raised a gloved hand and gave a cold command. Load! Behind him, HNDE and the other knights immediately raised their heavy crossbows. Awen drew her sword with focused determination. The metallic sounds echoed through the quiet forest, alerting the orcs to their intrusion. Adrian stepped forward. The cold wind whipped through his golden hair, his blue eyes burning with a fearsome, predatory light. With an excited smile, he whispered to the monsters, Hello there. Long time no see. Without looking back, he lowered his hand and ordered, Fire. Crossbow bolts tore through the frigid air, piercing the orcs with brutal force. Blood splattered across the snow as the monsters roared in pain and fury. The surviving orcs, wielding crude weapons, charged straight toward the formation. Adrian did not retreat. Instead, he drew his longsword and charged forward, his heavy footsteps thudding on the ground. A resonant roar filled the air, thick with bloodlust and the scent of blood. What I've missed, what I've remembered, what I've craved. This is amazing. The atmosphere of the battlefield facing the monster vanguard head-on. Prince Adrian! Awen screamed in desperation, worried for the prince's safety. Adrian completely ignored her. Don't you dare come here! He stood firm in the snow, raising his sword in a perfect defensive stance. Adrian's smile deepened, bordering on madness as he breathed in the chaotic air, and he warned with a chilling smile, One wrong step and you'll all be swept away. As the battle erupted, the blue light in Adrian's eyes was suddenly eclipsed by a violent crimson glow. The white, snowy landscape blurred. It was replaced by a deep memory from over 400 years ago. It was the story of a lone man with a burning hatred for orcs, a man who fought without rest. A lament from a father exhausted by endless battle. the fleeting song of an extraordinary vengeful warrior. That ancient blood-red aura erupted from Adrian's body. It swirled around him like an infernal flame. The red energy enveloped his sword, which hummed with deadly power. Ancient words echoed in his mind. I piled up the green corpses and climbed the mountain, and below a red lake stretched out. He looked down at the scene of carnage with a terrifyingly serene smile. A system window confirmed the presence of the ancient power singing its verse of vengeance. The scene shifts elsewhere. In a dimly lit room, long shadows danced on the opulent walls. A heavy leather pouch of coins landed on a mahogany desk with a soft thud. An orange-haired knight looked anxiously at the figure sitting in a deep red velvet armchair. They say people die all the time at Winter Castle, he murmured, his voice laced with fear. The older man in the chair leaned back, a sinister and arrogant smile spreading across his face. Don't worry, there won't be any war. What can that piece of trash prince possibly do there? He'll probably just hide in the castle and try to steal all the credit. The one who matters isn't that brat, it's Bevan H. Keep an eye on Winter Castle and report anything suspicious to me. Can you do that? The orange-haired knight snatched the pouch, his earlier fear replaced by a greedy and confident smile. I will do my utmost, Count. The warmth of the noble's study shattered, replaced by the cold, brutal reality of the snowy battlefield. The air was thick with the metallic stench of blood and the deafening roars of monsters. The orange-haired knight stood in the snow, his breath forming panicked clouds, his face pale with terror. As he stared at the giant green monster before him, he thought, this is what I heard. But this can't be happening. This is completely different from what that old man said. In the background, Awen, her dark hair flying in the cold wind, shouted, First rank, maintain formation and advance. A giant orc swung a crude wooden club. It slammed into the line of knights. Crack! The orange-haired knight gasped, stumbling back in terror, sweat pouring down his face. His mind reeled. Damn it, what should I do? Awen's voice cut through the chaos once more. Second-rank attack. Driven by pure survival instinct, he squeezed his eyes shut and charged forward, thrusting his spear with all his might into the monster's thick hide. But his relief instantly turned to despair as the giant orc, completely unharmed, looked down at him with glowing red eyes. He realized the horrifying truth. My attacks, they're completely useless. I'm dead for sure. The Oros raised its weapon ready to crush the trembling human. Suddenly, a brilliant blue flash illuminated the snowy forest as Awen dove into the fray. Her sword crackled with intense blue mana, slicing a chilling arc across the Oros's neck. Blood spurted out and the colossal monster fell backward into the snow. The orange-haired knight collapsed, his weapon falling from his hand as he cowered. Awen stood over him, her blue eyes cold and unforgiving. This is a battlefield. Don't you dare drop your weapon! The ground began to tremble rhythmically. From the tree line, a fearsome orc warrior emerged in horned armor and a helmet. Awen tightened her grip on her sword's hilt, her expression grim. All units prepare for battle. She quickly assessed the overwhelming enemy force. There were so many of them. It'll be hard to handle all of them with our current numbers. Before despair could set in, a crimson bolt of energy tore across the battlefield. Awen's eyes widened in shock. The red bolt pierced through a charging Oros, slicing it perfectly in two. Blood sprayed across the white snow. It was Adrian, his blonde hair catching the dim light. His silver armor blazed under a blood-red aura that erupted from his body. He moved like a god of death, his sword a crimson blur as he effortlessly slaughtered the monsters around her. Seeing him, she blurted out, Your Highness, but his eyes were soulless, and he didn't respond to her. The young man surged forward, ignoring her desperate cries. No matter how many he killed, it was never enough. Seeking the blood of his enemies, he wandered through the barren lands ruled by the orcs. The mana in his heart had long been depleted, yet he did not stop. He drank the blood of the Oros and chewed their flesh with every step. The man grew older and weaker. Only the demon sword in his hand supported him, burning his remaining life force to fulfill his final wish, a requiem for his wife and daughter. They had been killed without a single piece of them left behind. A tattered family portrait lay forgotten in the rubble. And finally, when he faced the enemy of his life, he was a withered husk. The lone white-haired avenger stood in the snow facing a colossal orc chieftain that was like a one-eyed giant whose shadow devoured the very earth. The man smiled a weary, broken smile, but his eyes blazed with the unquenchable red flame of hatred. He charged with everything he had left. The man did not give up. Until the very end, despite his courage, he was struck down. His shattered body lay in a snowy crater. There was no miracle. His life faded away, a forgotten tragedy. No one to tell the tale, no one to know. Only the demon sword from Adrian's past life remained plunged deep in the snow, a witness to it all. Returning to the present, the red aura around Adrian flared. With intense pain and absolute resolve, he thought, I will be the only one to remember it all. He stood tall amidst the slaughtered orc corpses, his voice ringing out, Knights, deal with the orc warriors, the rest of you hold back the Oros. He gripped his sword tightly. I remember now. The Song of Vengeance is an unfinished song. I must finish this song. Adrian threw himself back into the horde of monsters, a whirlwind of bloody retribution. He weaved through the giant beasts, beheading and dismembering them with terrifying grace. Blood arced through the air, turning the battlefield into a horrific canvas. A golden system window appeared amidst the slaughter. A new verse has been added to the Song of Vengeance. Adrian's voice rang out, filled with mystique, as he recited the newly forged words, Pile the green corpses to form a mountain, and beneath it a crimson swamp. And here I stand to honor your soul. The system window chimed again. The Song of Vengeance has become the Song of Requiem. Adrian's eyes returned to their normal sharp blue. The battle was over. The remaining knights stood victorious in the snow. Vincent stepped forward, holding a tattered, blood-soaked red flag. He snapped the wooden pole, breaking the symbol of the Oros. The Oros have been annihilated. Vincent turned to the soldiers with a victorious smile on his lips. I declare victory. This is our victory! The soldiers roared. Adrian watched them thinking, this guy's name is Vincent Belvon. Huh? The successor to a family that has dedicated its life to fighting monsters. He shares the same name as the pitiful avenger who once fell to end the existence of the Oros. A fleeting image of the old man who died in the snow flashed through Adrian's mind. Before he died, the man had spoken to his sword, let's meet again in the next life. How ironic, he thought. Vincent, his face showing clear annoyance, sulked quietly. Adrian glanced over his shoulder and asked, what is it? Vincent stepped forward, offering the tattered flag to the prince. He said, please accept this. Adrian tilted his head, completely baffled by the gesture. Vincent explained in a formal tone. In the 3rd Legion, the bravest soldier in battle is given the enemy's flag. It is the spoil of a glorious victory. Besides, this flag belongs to your highness. From behind, Awen approached respectfully. Your highness, I wish to express my respect for your valiant battle today. Suddenly, the entire troop of armored knights bowed. They roared in unison, their voices echoing across the white expanse. We honor your highness's valiant battle. The corners of Adrian's lips curved into a smug, satisfied smile. A different voice cut in, you should speak a little louder, so that everyone can hear. He raised the red flag high into the cold air, shouting with all his might, we have won! The knights were swept up in his inspiring energy. They raised their fists to the sky, cheering wildly, we won! A fiery sky served as a backdrop for Adrian as he stood there in a victorious pose. The soldiers roared, honor to his highness! Welcome to Winter Castle, your highness! Basking in self-admiration, his ego swelling, Adrian imagined victory, the glorious cheers. I have everything in my hands. But then, completely shattering the solemn atmosphere, he clutched the flag like a precious toy and shouted with joy, this flag is mine! Vincent, standing behind him, looked utterly bored by the prince's antics. Adrian continued to boast childishly, that's right, I'm the one who... He suddenly stopped, a shadow falling over his face as he heard a soft voice. He turned his head. Vincent looked at him with a slightly petty smile. I meant the Oros army's flag. I have 16 of them, you know. Adrian froze, his jaw dropping in silence. The knights behind them broke out in a cold sweat. One whispered, the captain is so childish. Adrian's shock quickly turned into a sulk. He waved the flag wildly in Vincent's face and yelled, who cares? This flag is mine! Vincent stepped back, shocked by the sudden outburst, and gritted his teeth. A vein popped on his forehead as he thought, I still can't stand him. A moment later, a huge bonfire was blazing, sending thick black smoke into the sunset sky. The soldiers stood silently before the pyre. Adrian and Awen watched the flames. Vincent remarked gently, the casualties weren't too high for a battle. Against an elite orc combat unit. Adrian replied coldly, is that so? Awen lowered his face, a hint of sorrow showing. Even so, it's still a pity. Vincent stated firmly without taking his eyes off the fire, victory is a commemoration. Victory is, and a tribute great enough for those who have fallen. We comfort the souls of the deceased with the blood of those Oros bastards.
Adrian looked at the young ranger commander, a familiar feeling washing over him. He thought, he has the same name and his way of speaking is similar. Could he really have been reincarnated? Adrian broke the solemn silence. Anyway, are all the members of this 3rd Legion going to follow us? Vincent lied without batting an eye. A ranger unit just happened to be passing by and joined us. The protagonist was not at all amused by the blatant lie. What an amazing coincidence! Vincent forced a laugh, sweating bullets. Yes, a coincidence. He thought, he doesn't believe me. He's already made preparations in secret. Vincent quickly changed the subject back to tactics. By the way, it's strange that an orc combat unit came all the way down to the foot of the mountain. Very strange. And it's odd that the rangers didn't detect their movements. We should head back quickly. The towering spires of Winter Castle were bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. The victorious expedition passed through the massive stone gates where the Count was waiting to welcome them. Well done. Congratulations on returning safely, everyone. Adrian immediately puffed out his chest, waving the tattered red cloth. This enemy flag is mine, he declared, waving it vigorously from side to side. The knights surrounding him laughed and clapped, showering him with praise. That's amazing, Your Highness. You captured an enemy flag in your very first battle. A short distance away, Awen and 2 other knights watched with lifeless eyes. One knight sighed, His Highness is bragging about that again. The other added, I think he's done that 11 times now. Awen remained completely silent. Adrian continued to boast, Yes, I was the only one. Suddenly the Count interrupted, pulling Vincent aside to report and ask about the unusual situation in the mountains. Vincent reported, explaining that the Oros unit appeared far too early. They might have found big prey or something happened deep within the mountains. The Count added, Neither of those possibilities bodes well for us. I wanted to let everyone rest, but this is important. Follow me. As Vincent left, he stopped and glanced over his shoulder. Your Highness, thank you for your hard work. Adrian watched him go, confused, and asked, He's acting strange, isn't he? Awen smiled and explained, Knowing his rough personality, he's probably embarrassed by his own sudden change in attitude. Before Adrian could think it over, a breathless voice called out, Your Highness! Adelia ran toward him, her face filled with obvious relief. You've returned safely. She stopped in front of him, panting, her large blue eyes trembling with worry. I was so worried that you might get hurt or lost. Adrian's expression softened into a gentle smile, just as she looked up hopefully. Yes. Adrian's gentle smile instantly morphed into a boastful grin as he shoved the tattered flag in her face and asked, Do you have any idea what this is? Night fell, blanketing the quiet room in darkness. Vincent spoke up. We will be forming an investigative ranger unit to deploy into the mountain region. In the coming days, we don't know what we'll encounter there. Therefore, only elite personnel with specialized mountain terrain reconnaissance skills will be sent. In other words, your participation is not required. Adrian slumped in a velvet armchair, pouted like a child. I don't really get what you're saying. Why did you bother coming all the way here just to give me this report? Vincent, clearly uncomfortable, avoided his gaze and replied, The commander ordered it. Adrian looked at him, realizing the hidden intention. It seems my uncle wants us to be friends. It's not that difficult, I suppose. Adrian sighed and replied, Fine. You may leave now. Make sure you get some proper rest. Vincent bowed and left. The heavy wooden door clicked shut as Adrian sighed wearily. He sat alone in the dim light, the red flag lying silently on the polished wooden table. I got too swept up in the battle today. That was the first time I recited an ancient epic without messing up a single stanza. This will likely continue, with all the epics that I remember anyway. The things I have aren't truly mine, but at the same time, they don't belong to me. I have to make them completely my own, just like the Canticle of Vengeance. Now it's a Canticle of Requiem. Suddenly, a sharp sound shatters the silence. Adrian snaps his head toward the window. Another sound follows, and he looks toward the glass panes. Lit only by the moonlight, he murmurs, a starling. But as Adrian focused, he held his breath and realized, wait, that's not what that creature is. It turned its head. Its eyes were glowing purple voids. A terrifying, chaotic aura of dark purple energy radiated from its small body. Adrian stared at this grim omen. The blood in his veins seemed to freeze. He realized the horrifying truth that was no ordinary bird. Looking at the bird, Adrian thought to himself, that bizarre bird, it's obvious someone sent it here. From within the bird, a voice rang out, Your Highness, do you like the gift I sent? That familiar voice made Adrian realize, so it really is her. But a starling, he asked, wondering, Could it be that the reason the orcs appeared at the foot of the mountain was you, Sigranda? I was only hoping your highness would get to face a more mundane enemy. Please happily accept this gesture of mine. Adrian frowned, thinking to himself. Because of that, dozens of hunters lost their lives, and yet she can still spout this nonsense. The entire elven race are all sick voyeurs. She must have gotten quite a kick out of watching us slaughter each other with the orc warband, huh? She continued to praise him. A canticle of vengeance aimed at the entire orc race I was watching, and I was truly impressed. But Adrian judged this. So this is the goodwill the elves always talk about, he thought, then replied, Stop talking nonsense. If you have something to say, just say it. This seemed to disappoint Sigranda a little. She sighed. Your Highness, you're so cold. The bird circled his head as her voice continued. But unrequited love has always been a struggle. What's a girl to do? I can only long for the day your Highness finally opens your heart to me. With that, the bird landed on his shoulder and continued, Deep within that mountain range there is something your Highness needs. A being of great antiquity lies sleeping within those mountains. If you use it as the lyrics for your song, I guarantee it will be an exquisite canticle. This stirred something in him. An exquisite canticle. Seeing he was starting to look interested, she immediately changed her tone. Oh my. It's a shame that time is running out for this adorable little thing. Well then, until we meet again, your Highness. As soon as she finished speaking, the bird exploded like a real bomb right in front of him, throwing the room into chaos. Adrian gritted his teeth in helpless anger, irritating me to the very end. What Sigranda wants from me is all too clear. She wants me to continuously write new war canticles. They are both the audience and the bards because they are a race that can never be the protagonist of a canticle. They weave the songs of others with their own melodies and sing the sword dance. Her giving me information is surely just because she wants to obtain a canticle, a more profound one through me. But even so, this time I'll play along with her and see what happens. The next day, as soon as he told Vincent this news, Vincent immediately questioned, You mean inside that mountain range, your grace? Hunters go in and out of that mountain like it's a marketplace, but that's only on the outskirts. Of those who have ventured deep into the mountain, not a single one has ever returned alive. This startled Adrian a bit. Really? Not a single one? Vincent nodded in confirmation. That's right, not one. Our duty is to stop the monsters from pouring down from the mountain, not to explore the range. In there, Adrian suddenly had an idea. So that means no one knows what's inside. In the past, knights scoured every corner of the world to reach a transcendent state, and in doing so, all the mysteries and wonders of this world were picked clean. And yet there's still a place here known as a forbidden land. He looked straight at the mountain ahead and assessed, so that's how it is. In many ways, coming to Bennerhat was the right decision. Suddenly, Vincent's voice cut in. I'm only saying this as a precaution, Your Grace. Please, Your Highness, you must absolutely not entertain the idea of going deep into that mountain range. Understanding what he meant, Adrian waved his hand dismissively. Yeah, I won't go in there, so don't worry. As he walked away, he hummed a little tune, thinking to himself, at least not for the time being. Another tedious day passed in this place. The guards yawned over and over out of boredom. Having nothing better to do, he took out his sword and began to clean it. As he wiped it, he thought, deep inside the mountain range, huh? Just what kind of enemy is out there? Even though I want to rush over there right now, now is not the time. We need more battles and more victories. Well, in any case, Banneret is always a place of frequent skirmishes, so it won't be long now. A horn blast echoed throughout the fortress, startling the soldiers. Damn it, is the next attack here already? Another man shouted, Everyone assemble on the walls, quick, summon all forces from outside into the city. Bring more arrows up here, hurry up. He followed them to see what was happening. Just as he was trying to see what was going on, Veo's voice commanded the soldiers, All archers to your positions. He and Awen then ran over anxiously, calling out. Uncle Veo turned and replied, You're here. Then he pointed forward. It's over there. On the opposite mountain, a few tiny figures appeared fleeing towards the fortress. After watching for a moment, he finally realized, Look, the Rangers are retreating. From what? A soldier shouted urgently, Run faster, you lot! Run! Run faster! The wolf cavalry is chasing you! It turned out the soldiers were rushing back because they were being pursued by a pack of orcs, according to the voices from the wall. Just a little more, keep going. They're still out of bow range. The fleeing Rangers cursed angrily. Damn it, you goddamn orcs, another one added. Don't they ever get tired? Watching from above, he also sensed something. Something seems very strange. Veo beside him added, That's right. They're just toying with their prey. There's no way the wolf cavalry can't close a gap that small. Seeing the fortress ahead, one of the soldiers, exhausted, stopped.
If we keep this up, we're all going to die. With that, he decisively turned back. I'll stay behind and buy some time. Alone. He faced the monsters, raising his sword. Come on! I am a ranger of the great banneret. Seeing his action, the others cried out in horror. No, don't do it. Don't stop. Just run a little further, you bastards! But by then it was too late for that soldier. He was immediately pounced on by a wolf and taken down, defeated in a single blow. Witnessing this scene, the other soldiers shouted in terror, "Captain!" Then they drew their weapons and turned back to fight, but their fate was no different from their captain's. The two soldiers were quickly killed in single blows. Watching everything from the wall, Veo sighed helplessly. Damn it. Aside from the existing sentries, the other soldiers can withdraw from the walls. Then he turned to him and continued, Aren't you going to ask why I didn't save them? Adrian replied, Didn't you bring me here on purpose, Uncle? Just to show me this very sight. He nodded in confirmation. That's right. It's a trap. If we send our troops out, we'll be devoured by them as well. In a battle against monsters, there's no such thing as common sense, Vincent said, stepping forward to continue for his father. They don't care about their own losses. In fact, a war of attrition is exactly what they want, and winter has only just begun. We can't afford to act recklessly. Then suddenly a soldier shouted, The wolf cavalry is approaching! What appeared before everyone's eyes were 3 wolf cavalrymen heading straight for the fortress without a shred of fear. The mouth of one wolf was even carrying a soldier who was covered in countless wounds. When it reached a certain distance, it dropped the soldier. Watching from above, a soldier gasped and shouted when he saw the man could still move. He's still alive. After that, the bodies of the other warriors were laid one by one below the city gate. Veo, watching from above, assessed this winter is truly not like any other year at all. Using such a cowardly trick, how dare you? Vincent yelled anxiously. As he watched, he thought to himself, Don't tell me that damn elf has a hand in this. Meanwhile, down below, heavy feet trudged through the icy snow. An orc radiating a thick, murderous aura and holding a bright red flag stared up at the people on the city gate. It gave a cryptic smile, and the man watching from above suddenly realized something. This aura is... The orc below stomped its foot hard, letting out a resounding roar as if in challenge. Startled, Vincent exclaimed, The Oros! Are they about to hold some kind of execution ceremony? Someone came up from behind, placed a hand on his shoulder, and explained, No. They're not planning an execution, they are issuing a challenge to a duel. He smiled, thinking, an incredibly ancient being is sleeping soundly within those mountains. Now I know what that is. While the orc was still shouting, hoarse voices suddenly echoed through the air, Fight! Fight gloriously to reclaim honor for the Legion, for the great king. He is still screaming his lungs out over there.